Chapter 759. Although his night vision wasn't the best in the organization, it wasn't bad either. After all, he could see more clearly when there was light. Since there was no one here, he didn't intend to let himself suffer. Moreover, for the sake of caution, he still needed to take a good look at the big wooden box to see if it was the one his employer had mentioned. He didn't want to make a mistake on this trip. The small round bead didn't shine as brightly as the water moon stone. It seemed to be covered by a light shield, making it more hidden. The light was different from different angles. At this time, most of the light was shining on the wooden box. He opened the lid of the wooden box and looked inside. He frowned. This was different from what his employer said. His employer said that Yanjiao had stolen a monster like the puppets in the desert. He had seen those puppets before, so he knew what his employer was talking about. But the one in front of him, although it looked a little strange compared to a normal person, it wasn't too different. Anyway, it didn't look like the puppets in the desert. It looked more like the Yanjiao had put a dead person here. Wasn't it? Was it the wrong one? How could it be? Feeling suspicious, he opened the round box again and looked at the worm inside. It stopped at this position. Could it be that it wasn't this secret room, but another secret room in this direction? As he lowered his head and thought, he suddenly felt a strong and cold murderous aura. It gave him goosebumps on his back and made his hair stand on end. He had been stealing for years, so of course he knew. Every time he had this feeling, he only had to do one thing: run. However, when he quickly put away the box and looked away, he found that the person he thought was a dead body lying inside had opened his eyes. The blood-red eyes were looking at him, and the expressionless face was moving. Not good. Seeing this, he thought that the Yanjiao had set up an ambush here and let someone pretend to be a dead body to lure him here. He cursed the Yanjiao in his heart. How cunning! Just as he was about to leave, he found that his left arm, which was leaning on the wooden box, was grabbed. It was like being grabbed by the claws of a fierce beast. Without hesitation, he shook his arm. Crack, 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 crack. A series of bone-cracking sounds could be heard. The arm that Gan Xie was grabbing was twisted in an instant. However, it wasn't broken by Gan Xie's grip. Instead, it was his own body that had changed. The bones in his arm became as slippery as a loach. They became thinner, curved, and slipped out of Gan Xie's hand. After leaving the other party's palm, although his arm once again formed the shape of a long arm bone amidst a series of cracking sounds, it was not without a price. Intense pain quickly spread from his arm to his brain, and his nerves felt as if they were being plucked one after another. Hissing sounds came from between his teeth. He didn't dare to shout loudly for fear of attracting more Yanjiao. He didn't have the time to wonder how this person could fool him by pretending to be dead, nor did he have the time to wonder if this was a deliberate arrangement by the Yanjiao people, or if this was just another secret the Yanjiao people were hiding. Right now, he just wanted to leave this place and make plans later. The person in the wooden box had already sat up. Seeing that he was about to chase after Gan Xie, the person twisted his waist, raised his knee, and swept his leg towards Gan Xie. He wanted to knock Gan Xie down again and buy him more time. In response to the person's kick, Gan Xie raised his arm to block it. Bang! When the leg and arm collided, Gan Xie only moved slightly. He didn't stop standing up. On the other hand, the person who had sneaked in felt a sharp pain in his calf. It was as if he hadn't kicked a person's arm, but a hard metal object. The person who had sneaked in felt even worse. To be able to get to where he was today, he definitely wasn't weak. In the past, when he fought with people, his leg was like a whip that could break people's bones. But now, not only did he fail to knock Gan Xie down, he almost broke his own leg with a kick? This was unbelievable. Retreat. In the face of such an opponent, he didn't want to fight anymore. He knew that his opponent was difficult to deal with, but he didn't care about Gan Xie. Hence, the person ignored Gan Xie and ran towards the stone door of the secret room. Like a gust of wind, He was about to slip out in the blink of an eye. Unfortunately, the moment he reached the stone door, the door, which was wide enough for 2 people, was closed with a bang. He ran too fast and didn't stop. The person who had sneaked in crashed into the stone door. The dust on the door was shaken off by the impact. Motherf * Kur Yenjiao people. If he still didn't know who was behind all this, he would really be an idiot. When he saw the person lying inside, he suspected that the Yenjiao people had already prepared for this. Now, he was sure. He grabbed the dented part of the stone door and pulled, but it didn't move an inch. As he cursed, the man heard the approaching footsteps behind him. He couldn't care less about continuing to pull the door open. He lowered his body, swung his shoulders, and bent his arms. Without turning his head, he threw a series of elbow strikes, hitting the people behind him like a torrential rain. Bang, 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 bang. It was as if he had hit a hard rock instead of a human body. Gan Xie stared at the person in front of him without blinking. It was as if he wasn't the one who was hit. He took 2 small steps back and regained his balance. Then, he raised his leg and kicked the person behind the stone door. The strength of this kick was far greater than the previous one. The strong force landed on the person's abdomen and sent him crashing into the stone door. The sound of bones breaking could be heard in the air. The person who was kicked landed heavily on the ground with a muffled thud. He curled up and wailed in pain. Outside the door, Xiao Xian stood by the stone door. He held the door with both hands to prevent it from being opened. He was the one who closed the door just now. Duo Kong and Jing Luo, who had rushed over, heard the banging sounds and patted the dust off their bodies. Is that Han tribesman really all right? After all, this person could be one of the robbers. Jing Luo was worried. Not only were the robbers not caught, but Gan Xie, who had just been resurrected, was also killed. It's fine. It's just that Gan Xie has an advantage in here. Most bandits were known for their fast speed and ability to escape. However, if they were trapped in a small space, their escape skills would not be of much use. If they could maintain their stamina, it would be fine. However, if they could not hold on for long, they could only be beaten up. Plus, Gan Xie probably needs to vent, Xiao Xian said. He had been like a corpse for many years. It wasn't easy for him to wake up with external help, only to realize that everything he knew was wrong. Even if they tried to save him, it was too late. His tribe was gone and he had become like a ghost. His digestive system had changed and he couldn't eat many things anymore. The most convenient way was to drink blood. Who could bear to turn from a normal person into this? He had never been able to release his pent-up emotions. Perhaps this time, he could use the robbers to vent. Hearing Xiao Xian's words, Jing Luo and Duo Kong thought it was a good idea. After all, they were robbers. They would feel good if they could make the robbers suffer. Why wouldn't they? After thinking it through, Jing Luo and Duo Kong were no longer in a hurry. They sat outside and waited. Their ears perked up, listening to the sounds inside and guessing the situation. Inside the secret room, Gan Xie walked towards the intruder step by step. His footsteps weren't loud, but he maintained an even speed and strength. Tap, 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 every sound sent chills down the intruder's spine. He felt the temperature in the secret room drop sharply. The intruder realized that the intruder wasn't panting. No heartbeat. Not even breathing. If it was a normal person, even if they could fool him by pretending to be dead, they would still be panting, their heartbeat would change, and their blood flow would change. He knew all these too well. In the past, he would use these to understand his opponent's true emotions. After all, facial expressions and actions could be deceiving. However, some of the characteristics of the body could reflect a person's true emotions. But now, all of these were useless. This person was really like a corpse. If it wasn't for the fact that he looked so different from the puppets in the desert, the intruder would have thought that this was what he was looking for. No, maybe, the intruder was shocked when he thought of this possibility. At this moment, Gan Xie was already in front of the man who was curled up on the ground. Suddenly, the man slid away from the stone door and away from Gan Xie like a loach. Then, with a sudden movement of his ankle, he spun up. His hands, which were originally hugging his abdomen, opened outwards. Dozens of sharpened small spindle-shaped blades flew out and drew different arcs in the air. Wherever the blades passed, the air seemed to be cut into pieces. With a series of whooshing sounds, the sharp blades pierced into various parts of Gan Xie's body. Instantly, Gan Xie's chest, back, shoulders, thighs, and even his neck and head were pierced by thin, spindle-shaped blades. However, the intruder's heart sank when he threw these blades out. Something was wrong. These hidden weapons that could easily pierce through animal skins and wooden planks seemed to have hit a harder rock. They couldn't go any further. Only a part of them was stuck in and the other part was exposed. Even if they couldn't penetrate deeply, they would still cause some damage. However, the person who was pierced like a hedgehog didn't seem to notice the injuries on his body. He didn't even make a sound and maintained his original appearance. He didn't even blink. Also, blood would flow out if he was pierced. However, he didn't smell any blood. It was as if this person didn't have any blood. How was this possible? While the intruder was still in shock, Gan Xie was like an agile monkey in the forest. He changed his slow pace and sped up, chasing after the intruder who was trying to escape. The intruder had the advantage in terms of speed. However, he was already injured and dodging consumed a lot of energy. After a while, his dodging speed slowed down. At this moment, an arm that was much thinner than the Yanjiao's arm smashed into his back. The force behind the blow sent him flying. His face slammed into the wall with a loud bang. His nose was broken and 2 of his teeth were broken. The smell of blood filled his mouth. Outside the door, Duo Kong shook his head when he heard the sound of something crashing into the wall. Why are the robbers so daring? They don't learn from their mistakes. Didn't robber 11, 12, 6, and 7 all suffer at the hands of the Yanjiao? How dare they come here? Could it be someone else? Duo Kong asked. No, it's very likely, Jing Luo said. No matter who it is, we'll find out soon. Xiao Xian listened to the commotion inside. It wouldn't last long. They would find out soon. What if Gan Xie kills him? Duo Kong asked. I don't think so. After all, he's the one who wants to know the truth the most, Xiao Xian said. In the secret chamber, the person who had been beaten to a pulp felt a mixture of physical pain and shock in his heart. He couldn't believe that what he had just experienced was real. However, he was the one who had been beaten, so he had no choice but to believe it. The person in front of him had no heartbeat or breath. It was as if he didn't even need to breathe. He was too similar to the strange puppets in the desert. Could it be that the Yanjiao had already gained control of another type of monster similar to the desert puppets? He knew about the puppets in the desert. In order to completely immobilize them, one had to break their bones bit by bit. The monster in front of him was probably the same. However, it was too difficult to do that to the person in front of him. His bones were too hard. He knew that he couldn't win against such a powerful puppet. If he continued, he would only be beaten to death. He had to escape. However, the stone door was tightly shut and he couldn't open it. He couldn't defeat the person inside either. He could only try his best to avoid the opponent's attacks and stall for time. Perhaps he could talk to the Yanjiao people? Just as that person was about to escape, a hand pressed down on his head, pushing him down as he was about to take a step forward. His legs knelt on the ground. His bones hit the stone floor with a loud thud. The man screamed in pain again. His fingers gripped the scimitar that looked like a beast's claws and slashed at the hand pressing down on his head. Poof, poof, poof. The sound of the weapon slashing against Gan Xie's arm was strange. It didn't sound like a normal person's arm. It didn't feel right either. When he slashed, the man purposely aimed for a few important blood vessels on Gan Xie's arm. However, just like before, there was no sound of blood spurting out. There wasn't even the smell of blood. Moreover, when the scimitar broke through Gonchie's skin and touched his bones, it was as if it was blocked by a hard metal object. It couldn't go any further. The more he thought about it, the colder his heart became. The hand on his head didn't move an inch. In the darkness, the man could make out the general appearance of the person holding his head. He could also see that the other person's eyes were different from normal people's. Those eyes were cold and emotionless. No, the hand on his head didn't have any warmth either. A cold chill seeped into his limbs and bones. Every bone in his body seemed to be unable to withstand the chill and was trembling, especially when he felt the fingers on his head begin to tighten. He really could not hold it in any longer. He was afraid that if he was a step late, his head would not be complete. "Don't kill me. I didn't want to come here. Someone asked me to come here. It's Su-Lu. It's Su-Lu, the second young master of Fallen Leaves City in Rock Hill City." In the face of the fear of death, the man's face contorted with pain became even more ferocious. It was as if he was throwing caution to the wind and yelling with all his might. He was afraid that the Yanjiao outside the secret chamber wouldn't be able to hear him. At this point, he no longer cared about the benefits that Su-Lu had promised him, although the thought of those benefits still made his heart ache. He wanted nothing more than to kill the Yanjiao who had set this trap. But now, he was the one who had lost. He could only admit defeat. At a time like this, if he didn't use Su-Lu as a shield, was he supposed to attract the hatred himself? After yelling, the man felt the hand on his head stop tightening. He relaxed and thought to himself, sure enough, it's more useful to use someone else as a shield. Perhaps he should have said more. That way, he could have negotiated with the Yanjiao to save his life. As for the Yanjiao and Su-Lu, let them fight it out. It would be best if both sides suffered great losses. The man lowered his head slightly and panted heavily. Every time he breathed, he felt immense pain in his body. His eyes flashed with ruthlessness as he looked at the stone door from the corner of his eyes. But in the next moment, the man, who had just heaved a sigh of relief, felt his body freeze again. Someone spoke, but the voice didn't come from outside the door. It came from above him. "Who are you? And who is Su-Lu?" The voice was a little strange. Some of the words used were also strange. But this didn't stop him from understanding the other party. He raised his head in shock. The hand on his head was still pressing down, so he could only raise it slightly. He tried his best to look up and meet the other party's eyes. What? The man, whose head was pressed down, trembled as he spoke. "Who are you? And who is Su-Lu?" Gonchie thought that the man didn't understand and spoke slower this time. What Gonchie didn't know was that the man on the ground couldn't believe what he was seeing. It wasn't that he didn't understand. Wasn't this another type of puppet that Yanjiao had imitated the Rock Hill City people to control? Wasn't this a corpse? No, that couldn't be right. A controlled corpse puppet couldn't speak. Then what was this thing in front of him? Or, was this a helper that Yanjiao had found? Gonchie saw that the man didn't speak. He pressed down harder on the man's head. Feeling the pain on his head, the man finally snapped out of his shock. Now wasn't the time to dwell on these questions. "I'll talk. Don't hit me. I'll tell you everything." Feeling the fingers on his head stop, the man's Adam's apple bobbed. He swallowed a mouthful of blood and tried his best to calm down so that he could analyze the situation and find a scapegoat. "It was Su-Lu who found me. He said that he lost something important and that Yanjiao stole it. He asked me to help him find it. It's true. He even gave me a bug box to look for it." As he spoke, the man took out the bug box. Although the bug box was made of wood, it was very resilient. When the man was beaten up, the bug box was also affected. However, there were only some dents on the bug box. The inside of the box didn't change much. Gonchie looked inside the open bug box. The wriggling worm was wriggling in his direction. It was using its head to knock against the wall of the box. The man obviously noticed it as well. His expression changed as he turned the wooden box in his hand, turning the worm against the wall of the box to face him. However, when he stopped, the worm started moving again. It crawled along the wooden box and the wall of the box. Then, it stopped in front of Gonchie and used its head to knock against the wall of the box. The man's hand that was holding the wooden box began to tremble. The worm's reaction was enough to prove the identity of the man in front of him. This was the lost thing that Su Lu had mentioned. This was the goal of his trip. After realizing this, the man's heart was filled with regret. Su Lu, King lied to me. Didn't you say that the Yanjiao stole something similar to those puppets in the desert? Didn't you say that the lost thing was an ancient corpse that couldn't be more dead? Then, who was the person who had beaten him half to death and almost crushed his head into pieces? How was this person similar to those puppets in the desert that resembled dried corpses? Oh, this weirdo could still talk. Other than the fact that he didn't have a heartbeat, didn't bleed, and didn't pant, which part of him resembled an ancient corpse that had been dead for a long time? Or did he come to life? I don't King believe it. Chapter 760. I've been tricked. That was what the intruder was thinking. He hated Su Lu for it. If Su Lu had told him the truth, he definitely wouldn't have accepted this mission. Although he desperately needed merits to raise his ranking, he wouldn't risk his life. As for Gonchie, when the intruder mentioned Su Li's name, his murderous aura intensified. Before this, Xiao Xian had told him that if he wanted to know if Rock Hill City really existed in the desert and if they really used the Han tribesmen as puppets, all he had to do was wait a few days. Xiao Xian knew that Su Lu wouldn't give up so easily. If they really valued the Han tribesmen like Gonchie, they would definitely think of a way to snatch him back. Xiao Xian didn't know if the Han tribesmen had the same physique as Gonchie, but with Gonchie's physique, if he was turned into a puppet, he would definitely be a powerful force. Su Lu would definitely think of a way to get someone to steal something so important back. If no one came after a few days, it would mean that Su Lu didn't value Gonchie that much. Xiao Xian would also let Gonchie go to the desert. However, reality proved that Su Lu did value Gonchie a lot. Why did Su Lu send you here? Gonchie asked again. He wanted to know why Su Lu valued him so much. For the sake of survival, the intruder didn't want to waste too much time talking. He directly told them everything he knew about Su Lu to attract their hatred. Fortunately, he had asked a lot of questions before accepting this mission. Su Lu said that the stolen item was very important. It was given to him by an important person in Rock Hill City. After some time, he would have to hand it over to someone else. He had to find it on time, or else he would be punished, because the intruder spoke very loudly. Even though the secret room was soundproof, Xiao Xian and Jing Luo could still hear him. Moreover, Xiao Xian had already opened the door slightly, so they could hear him even more clearly. Xiao Xian thought of the person from the Yi family. The construction of Rock Hill City in the desert was due to the ominous contribution of the Yi family. Some people even suspected that the construction of Rock Hill City in that location and the avoidance of the disaster was due to Yi Xiong of the Yi family. It was rumored that Yi Si had a hand in the incident with the desert monsters. Even Yi Xiong thought so. Yi Xiong might have been the one who found the Han tribesmen. The tombs the tribesmen left for themselves were not easy to find, and those who could find them were not ordinary people. Do they have more people like me? Gonchie asked. This was what he wanted to know the most. Yes, there is. The eyes of the person whose head was pressed to the ground moved. He felt that he was so smart to be able to hear the urgency in this strange person's words. Immediately, he thought quickly and made a decision. He continued, There is, but I heard from them that other than you, the others have already been made into puppets. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Don't kill me, I still have a lot to say. When he heard the first sentence, Gonchie was happy. However, when he heard the second sentence, he was furious. He almost lost control of his strength. Are you telling the truth? Ganxie asked. The intruder vaguely understood the key words and quickly nodded. Yes. I'm telling the truth. I swear. It's because everyone else has been made into puppets and you're the only one left. This is a hurdle for the others. As you all know, there's more than one person in Rock Hill City who can control puppets. If any of them can turn you into a puppet and cross that hurdle, they'll be promoted. As for the person beside Su Lu, if he can't turn you into a puppet within the stipulated time, he'll have to give you to the next person. In other words, other than Ganxie, everyone else in the Han tribe had been turned into puppets. The reason they kept Ganxie alive was to give the other controllers a test. Whoever could solve this question would be promoted. Ganxie was just a test subject. Everyone who took the test had a limited amount of time to solve the question. If they couldn't solve the question within the time limit, they'd have to give it to the next candidate. No wonder Su Lu and the person beside him were so anxious. Not only did they fail to solve the question, they even lost it. If others knew about this, especially the higher-ups, how could they survive in the desert? How could Su Lu, who had always been ambitious to become the next lord of Loya City, compete with the third young master, Su Gu? Xiao Xian sensed that Ganxie's aura was unstable. He vaguely looked like he was when he was agitated. He was worried that Ganxie would crush the intruder to death. He knocked on the stone door and opened it wider. Ganxie and the intruder looked at the stone door. Xiao Xian looked at the person who was caught and asked, "Is this your robber account?" Stolen numbers were the numbers within the word thief. This was what Xiao Xian learned from the people who used to be thieves. Robber 11. The intruder saw that the Yanjiao had finally revealed himself. Xiao Xian shook his head. "You're not. I've seen Robber 11 before. The one you saw was the previous Robber 11. I'm the current Robber 11. The intruder quickly said. "Your ranking changed again?" Xiao Xian asked. "Is the previous Robber 7 dead?" The current Robber 11 was shocked. The Yanjiao had an old grudge against the robbers. He had already cursed Robber 7 countless times in his mind. "No. If you're talking about the Robber 7 from a few years ago, he's still Robber 7 now. It's said that one time when he failed a mission, Robber 6, who was with him, blew the whistle and was rescued by others. Robber 6 and Robber 7 were useless. You might not know this, but we have a rule, especially the top 10. If they failed a mission and blew the whistle for help, their ranking will drop by 1 place. Robber 6 and Robber 7 were demoted because of that failure. However, because someone before them died, their overall ranking rose by 1 place. They're really lucky." Robber 11 didn't finish his sentence. Other than Robber 2, who was in front of Robber 6, Robber 9 was also killed on the other side of the sea. With 2 deaths, those who were once in the 11th and 12th place were now in the top 10. As for Robber 11, he was once in the 13th place and was now Robber 11. He was only 1 step away from the top 10. He didn't dare to cross the sea to the other side of the continent. He didn't want to be killed like Robber 9. Therefore, he was waiting for someone to die before him. He just needed to maintain his achievements. Now that Su Lu came looking for him, Robber 11 was tempted. It wasn't just because of the benefits Su Lu promised. The Yanjiao tribe was in the limelight. If he could steal something from the Yanjiao tribe, his achievements would be even greater. He might even be able to squeeze the people in front of him down the list. The Yanjiao tribe was strong, but there were only so many of them. After he found out the location of his target with the help of the worm, he observed the surroundings of the Flaming River Castle for a few days. There weren't many guards inside, and there were also many people from other tribes. He liked places where people were mixed because it was convenient for him to hide. However, Robber 11 didn't expect the Yanjiao to set up a trap for him. Robber 6 and Robber 7? Blow the whistle? Xiao Xian recalled the situation in the forest when they were looking for the green-faced fanged beast. Robber 6 was the one helping Robber 7. They blew the whistle and were rescued. Robber 11 was still talking, obviously insulting Robber 6 and 7 and cursing Su Lu. Xiao Xian suddenly asked, "Do you know why Robber 6 and 7 were demoted?" Robber 11, who was in the midst of mocking Xiao Xian, was stunned. He looked at Xiao Xian in confusion. At the same time, he had a bad feeling. Back then, Robber 6 and 7 wanted to steal something from Yanjiao. They were chased by me, so they had no choice but to blow the whistle. Otherwise, they would have been smashed to death. Xiao Xian closed the stone door again. Robbers were more hated than Changles. Not only did they take pride in stealing, they would do anything to get it. Back then, some of the people from other tribes who entered the forest with Xiao Xian were killed by robbers. Tonight, if it weren't for Xiao Xian's arrangements, some Yanjiao people would have been killed as well. For example, the 2 Yanjiao people who were guarding the entrance of the secret passage. Robber 11, who was locked inside, was stunned by Xiao Xian's words. He wasn't one of the top 10 robbers. He didn't have many resources and he wasn't well informed. It wasn't easy for him to find out the movements of the top 10 robbers. Of course, he didn't know why Robber 6 and 7 were demoted. If he knew that Robber 6 and 7 were killed by Yanjiao people, he wouldn't have come here even if he was beaten to death. Su Lu UF** King set me up, Robber 11 thought. If he could get out of here alive, he would definitely kill Su Lu and everyone around him. Unfortunately, Gan Xie didn't plan on letting him go. Gan Xie already knew from Xiao Xian that the puppets in the desert were lifeless creatures with no self-consciousness. The remaining people in his tribe were all turned into puppets. In other words, he was the only one who was truly alive. But in reality, Gan Xie himself couldn't continue the Han tribe. He couldn't be considered a normal person anymore. If Xiao Xian didn't bring him here, he could imagine what would have happened to him. No matter what Xiao Xian's original intentions were, Xiao Xian did bring him back to life. He hated the Rain tribe, but in comparison, he hated the people in Rock Hill City who turned his people into puppets. They were his enemies. In his grief and anger, this Robber 11, who wanted to bring him back to Rock Hill City and hand him over to his enemies, became even more despicable. This time, Xiao Xian didn't come in to interrupt. Gan Xie's rising anger made the energy in his body restless. His red eyes glowed fiercely as if his blood was boiling. It was as if he was about to break through the barrier in front of him. An aura of grief and indignation seeped out of his body and surged forward. A long howl suddenly sounded. The air in the secret room churned as if a hurricane had been set off. Robber 11, who was pressed in front of Gan Xie, felt it the most intensely. His entire body trembled from the wind and he was shocked. This wasn't a sound that could be made by a normal person's throat and lungs. The sound was formed by the airflow coming out of his nostrils and the roar coming from his mouth. It was like the roar of a nocturnal beast in the forest. The entire secret room was shaking. Not just the secret room, but the entire Flaming River Castle was shaking. After a pause, a second long howl followed. An even fiercer aura erupted from Gan Xie's body. With Gan Xie as the epicenter, it surged outwards. This second howl was louder than the first. The rising energy turned into a roar. The dust on the floor, ceiling, and everywhere else was pulled out by this howl. It flew up and down along with the turbulent airflow. The howl came from the Flaming River Castle. However, because of some narrow vents and the echoes within the castle, the howl had an inexplicable sense of strangeness. It sent chills down the spines of those who heard it in the night. Many people woke up from their dreams. Many travelers were already on high alert. The sound made them sit up straight from their animal hide cushions. They took out their weapons and looked outside. There was nothing outside except for those who were frightened and went out to see what was going on. What's going on? Are there fearsome beasts? I didn't hear the Yanjiao's warning. The last time a fearsome beast came, they blew the whistle. Maybe the Yanjiao people forgot to blow the whistle? Or maybe they didn't want to blow the whistle. The conspiracy theorist's mind started to wander as he thought of all the possibilities. The birds in the nearby forest screamed and flew away, not caring about their confused sense of direction in the night. This made people feel even more uneasy. The howl sounded 3 times, each time more terrifying than the last. Some people guessed that the Yanjiao must have secretly raised a fearsome beast to guard the flaming river castle. It was just that no one knew about it. No one knew why it was exposed this time. Maybe it was to guard against people who wanted to sneak into the flaming river castle. The howl made some people give up on the idea of entering the castle, but it also made some people restless, like the Chonglis. Not long ago, they left the flaming river castle and went out to play. They saw the customs of different tribes and even watched some tribes merge their fire seeds. However, to them, those tribes were too poor, so they didn't want to help. In the end, they decided to go back to the Flaming River trading point. This time, they came back for a few days. They couldn't stay idle and wanted to leave again, but they didn't expect to encounter something like this. "I really want to go in and take a look," Wu He said. "Aren't you afraid of being caught by the Yanjiao again?" Someone beside Wu He disagreed. The experience last time was too deep. He didn't want to go through it again. Among them, some agreed, some disagreed. In the end, Wu He went to EC in the middle of the night to ask him. He had been taken advantage of before, so this time, he wanted to listen to EC's opinion. EC was startled awake by the 3 strange howls at the Flaming River Castle. Now that it was quiet, he was woken up by Wu He again. He was still yawning. When he heard Wu He's words, EC stopped yawning and said, "If you want to die, go ahead. Don't tell me you know me. Don't drag me down." When he heard EC's words, Wu He became anxious. "What? Are you saying that it's very dangerous inside and we won't be able to come back?" "With your strength, you definitely won't be able to come back," EC said confidently. Seeing that Wu He didn't believe him, EC pointed at the grasshopper who was still hiding in the corner with a vigilant look. The spikes on its back were still there. "Do you see that? You're so scared? Then what's inside the Flaming River Castle? Is it a human or a beast?" Wu He was still curious. The Chonglu people were naturally curious. It was their nature to be curious. "I don't care. I only know that I'll die a horrible death if I go in. If you want to go, then go." EC didn't want to waste any more time with them. He asked the grasshopper to chase them away. He looked in the direction of the Flaming River Castle and whispered, "These Yanjiao people are getting more and more confusing. What is it?" After the commotion at night died down, Zheng Luo called a few important guards over and scolded them harshly. Only then did the guards know that someone had sneaked into the Flaming River Castle. He didn't tell too many people before this, mainly because it was a better plan. He needed to keep it a secret. At the same time, Zheng Luo had another idea. He wanted to use this incident to teach the Yanjiao people a lesson. Now, many Yanjiao people were more like nouveau riche than real masters who had lived for thousands of years. Even if Yanjiao's ancestors were arrogant, they weren't like this. Their mentality wasn't right. However, the mentality of the Yanjiao people wasn't something that could be adjusted in just a few years. The alarm bells couldn't stop ringing. Once they stopped ringing, they would relax. In the secret underground room, there were all kinds of poisonous gas and hidden weapons everywhere. Robber 11 had tried everything he could before he died. Unfortunately, he still couldn't escape from Gan Xie. The next day, when Xiao Xian went in, Gan Xie was standing there in a daze. There was blood on his hands and his eyes were unfocused. He looked like he was frozen. Xiao Xian wasn't surprised. It wasn't the first time he was like this. He looked at Robber 11's body on the ground. It was still intact. Last night, Gan Xie's emotions were turbulent. However, it wasn't as intense as Xiao Xian expected. It was strange. If someone knew what Xiao Xian was thinking, they would definitely refute him. Last night, this person was roaring like a wild beast. The entire flaming river castle shook. His roar could be heard outside the castle. Everyone in the trading point was shocked awake. How was that not intense? However, when you thought about what happened to Gan Xie, it wasn't intense. This was why Xiao Xian didn't stop him last night. Gan Xie's emotions were a little strange. In the secret room, the person standing there quietly looked very calm. It was as if the person who roared last night wasn't him. He was frighteningly calm. "It's strange," Gan Xie said. "What's strange?" Xiao Xian asked. "I don't feel too sad or angry." Gan Xie's words weren't very clear. Luckily, he said the important words clearly. Xiao Xian also understood. Gan Xie realized that his emotions weren't that intense. There were emotions of sadness and hatred, but they weren't that intense. This wasn't normal. His roar was very fierce, but it was different from the hysteria caused by intense emotions. Moreover, he calmed down too quickly. Xiao Xian thought that Gan Xie was cold-hearted, but he didn't expect that to be the case. Xiao Xian didn't answer him. He knew that Gan Xie wasn't stupid. After he woke up, Gan Xie's thinking had gradually returned to normal. Back then, the shaman of the Han tribe had chosen someone in a desperate situation, so he probably wasn't stupid either. Other than strength, intelligence was also part of the shaman's consideration. Most shamans had the same mentality. They only chose the right and most suitable person. As for Gan Xie's current situation, he probably already knew the answer. Xiao Xian didn't need to say more. "You didn't sleep last night?" Xiao Xian asked. This person stood with his eyes open the whole night. Shouldn't he sleep standing up? Was he really a zombie? Sleep? "No, I don't need to sleep anymore," Gan Xie said slowly. After a pause, he said, "I've slept enough." Actually, it wasn't that he had slept enough. Gan Xie really didn't need to sleep like a normal person. Sleep was a periodic adjustment of the body, but Gan Xie didn't need it. His body was no longer a normal body. He didn't need this kind of adjustment. For example, when he forced Robber 11 to slow down, he didn't feel tired. He didn't feel tired because he wasn't exhausted. "What do you plan to do now? Go to the desert?" Xiao Xian asked. "No," Gan Xie said, "now is not the time." From Robber 11's words yesterday, Gan Xie knew that he couldn't fight against Rock Hill City on his own. The fact that they could turn his tribesmen into puppets showed that they were very powerful. If it was a normal Han tribesman, he might have rushed to the desert on impulse. However, Gan Xie calmly analyzed the pros and cons and made the most suitable choice for himself. There was another reason. He didn't understand the current world. After so many years, everything seemed to have changed. He needed time to get used to it. No one remembered that there was a tribe called Han. If he didn't wake up, even his totem would have disappeared. "I want to stay here," Gan Xie said. "Okay." Xiao Xian didn't mention too many conditions. With Gan Xie's intelligence, he should know what to do if he wanted to stay here. "Where do you want to stay?" Xiao Xian asked. "Here." Gan Xie looked around the secret room. His gaze stopped at the broken wooden box. He pointed at it and asked Xiao Xian, "Do you still have that?" "Sure, I'll get someone to make another one." "Dry wood. Using sun-dried wood?" "Sure, we have dry wood for our ships. It's sturdy enough." "I want to take a look outside." Gan Xie tried his best to express his thoughts with the few words he had. Xiao Xian looked at the hidden weapons on Gan Xie's body. "Don't you need to remove them first?" "No." He just wanted to look outside. "Okay, I'll bring you out." Xiao Xian led Gan Xie out of the secret room and up the underground passage. Although the people in the Flaming River Castle had already been informed of the existence of this strange person, they were still shocked when they first saw him. Putting aside the fact that he had green skin, there were sharp blades all over his body, and some parts of his skin were flipped open. There were also obvious cuts so deep that the bones could be seen. If he was an ordinary person, he would have died long ago. However, this person didn't even bleed. It was as if all the wounds and sharp weapons on his body didn't exist. He followed Xiao Xian with a stiff face. Xiao Xian didn't bring him out. Instead, he brought him to the Flaming River Tower. If we go up, we'll reach the top of the Flaming River Tower. However, I think it's fine here, Xiao Xian said. Gan Xie stood here and could see the entire trading point. He could also see the mountains and forests in the distance. Everything had changed. The houses, the people's clothes, everything was different from what he had seen in the depths of his memory. It was like a new world. Time seemed to have passed for a long time. The sun was high in the sky, shining through the window. Gan Xie reached out his hand and touched the place where Yang Guang's light shone. After a while, he retracted his hand. It was a little hot, much hotter than his body temperature. It felt like he was being burned. As expected, he doesn't like it, Gan Xie muttered. How could a tribe with a sun in their totem not like the sun? It was just that everything had changed. His preferences had changed too. Chapter 761. Gan Xie temporarily settled down in the Flaming River Castle. Xiao Xian's underground secret room was his room, and Xiao Xian had another secret room prepared for him. Perhaps it was because his body had changed, but Gan Xie no longer ate beast meat. Instead, he drank blood directly. Every day, the slaughterhouse would send him some blood collected from the beasts they killed. Perhaps to some people, it was a pity that they couldn't eat delicious food, but to Gan Xie, it was simple as long as he could live. Gan Xie didn't like the sun. He preferred the dark underground secret room. When he was lying down, he would lie in a coffin-like wooden box made of dry wood. He didn't need to sleep, and would only lie down when he was deep in thought. When Gan Xie came out at night, he would listen to the Yanjiao guards talk about the mainland. This was agreed upon by Xiao Xian and Zheng Luo. Gan Xie's ability to express himself was limited. He was also an antique, and he didn't even know what pottery was. Perhaps it was because he had been buried underground for so long that he couldn't speak fluently. He even had a strange accent. Perhaps Gan Xie would be able to change if he listened to other people's words. On the other hand, the Yanjiao people didn't completely trust Gan Xie. After all, they weren't from the same tribe. Gan Xie was too dangerous, especially at night when most people weren't in a good state of mind. It was better to have a person like this in front of them than not to see him at all. At first, the guards were nervous when they saw Gan Xie. They had heard the screams that night, but they didn't expect it to be made by a human. Gradually, they got used to it. Gan Xie was actually quite easy to get along with. He didn't talk much, and even if he did, he would only say a few words. If the Yanjiao needed help, he would help the guards. He even helped catch a few people who wanted to sneak into the Flaming River Castle at night. His senses were stronger than the guards. As for the Rain Tribe, Xiao Xian had already told Gan Xie about it. As former enemies, Gan Xie didn't have a good impression of the Rain Tribe. However, when he heard about the Rain Tribe's current situation, he suddenly remembered the Han shaman's regretful look. Perhaps they shouldn't have fought so hard back then? Both sides had suffered great losses, resulting in the current situation. However, with the players from Rock Hill City drawing aggro, Gan Xie placed most of his aggro on Desert City. Plus, Gan Xie's hatred towards the Rain Tribe wasn't that strong. Since the Rain Tribe had a good relationship with Yanjiao, and he was relying on Yanjiao, he wouldn't touch the Rain Tribe for the time being. On the other hand, what shocked Gan Xie the most was what Xiao Xian had mentioned about the situation on the mainland. After the fusion of the Fire Seed, the tribe might disappear? Could disbanded tribesmen form new groups? Gan Xie couldn't believe it. This overturned everything he knew. As a tribesman whose thoughts were stuck in the past, Gan Xie was very curious about this. He didn't understand what it was like to leave their tribe and form a new group with outsiders. What kind of feelings did they have? It was rare for something to distract Gan Xie. Xiao Xian thought for a moment and said, "If you're interested in the other side of the sea, you can ask someone." Ask who? Gan Xie was puzzled. He really wanted to know more now. The world today was too new. There were all kinds of handmade products, from pottery to metal, and the changes in the tribe's fire seed. All of these changed his perception of the world. He had already learned a lot from the Yanjiao people on duty at night. It turned out that there was another piece of land on the other side of the sea. The two pieces of land were close to each other because of the natural disaster, and there were people coming and going from both sides. There are people from the other side of the sea in the Flaming River Castle too. I'll take you there. Xiao Xian looked at the sun outside. It was morning now, and Yang Guang was fine today. Gan Xie didn't like to move around during the day, but the people there were asleep at night. Gan Xie didn't like to walk under the sun anymore, but he could endure it if he wanted to know more. Putting on a hooded cloak, Gan Xie followed Xiao Xian out of the Flaming River Castle. Wearing a hood in the middle of the day and covering his entire body was indeed strange in the trading point. However, it wasn't like they hadn't seen stranger things before. The reason why they looked over there curiously was because the people in the trading point knew Xiao Xian. A person brought by Xiao Xian and dressed so mysteriously, so everyone was wondering who that person was. Isi was busy with the things at hand. He had 2 accounts books in his hands, both of which belonged to the Yanjiao people. One was a tally of the things that travelers paid when they entered the Flaming River trading point in the past 30 days. The other was a tally of the rent. Some of the smaller tribes nearby had already set up shop here and would pay rent every 30 days. Beside EC, the half-beast slave, Grasshopper, was dozing off on a low stone bench. Suddenly, Grasshopper woke up with a start. The thorns on his back stood up and he looked around nervously. Then, he looked in a certain direction. Sensing Grasshopper's change, EC stopped what he was doing and frowned. He was wondering what had happened. Not long after, EC saw Xiao Xian bring in a person wearing a sackcloth cloak. "Are you busy?" Xiao Xian asked. "Not really, it's just some small things." EC looked at the cloaked person beside Xiao Xian. He was even more curious because Grasshopper was on full alert. If EC wasn't here, Grasshopper would have run away. This was his reaction to danger. "This is?" EC asked. Gan Xie pulled back his hood, revealing his expressionless face. His red eyes looked at EC. Gan Xie from the Han tribe. Han tribe? EC had never heard of it before. After coming here, he had studied a lot about the tribes. He remembered all the small and remote tribes that were mentioned, but he had never heard of this Han tribe. Furthermore, this person was able to make Grasshopper react like this, so he was obviously very strong. His tribe shouldn't be too weak either. No one had even mentioned the Han tribe before. Gan Xie left the tribe for a long time. He wanted to know more about the other side of the sea, so I brought him here. "You're more familiar with the situation there," Xiao Xian said. Although Zheng Luo and the others also came from the other side of the sea, they lived far away from the city and lived in the forest. There were many things that they didn't know. Asking EC would be more comprehensive. EC didn't find this troublesome. He was also curious about this person called Gan Xie. This person gave him a strange feeling. He didn't even feel his breathing from the moment he entered the room. If Gan Xie stood there without moving, he would really look like a stone statue. EC was about to agree when he heard some movement from the window. "EC, I still can't accept this. Tell me about the Flaming River Castle." Wu He, who was climbing through the window, saw the situation in the room and his face turned pale. His whole body seemed to be embedded in the window. He froze there and didn't dare to go any closer. "Sorry, wrong door." As he spoke, Wu He turned to jump out of the window. However, Xiao Xian grabbed him by the back of his shirt and dragged him back in like a chick. As for the other Chong Lis behind Wu He, they immediately fled upon seeing Xiao Xian, ignoring Wu He. It wasn't that they didn't care about Wu He's life. They had to protect themselves first and then wait for an opportunity to save him. If it were any other Yanjiao who caught Wu He, they wouldn't be so scared. They might have rushed over to save him on the spot. However, it was Xiao Xian who dragged Wu He in. They still remembered that he was the one who slapped them down from the sky. They were instantly scared. I didn't steal anything this time, Wu He quickly explained. He knew he couldn't escape from Xiao Xian's grip, so he stopped struggling and tried to sound sincere. I really didn't steal anything. I didn't ask you that. Why are you so guilty? Xiao Xian dragged Wu He into the room. No. I'm not guilty. Definitely not. Wu He said. Then what did you mean just now? Did you want to sneak into the Flaming River Castle at night? Xiao Xian asked. No. Definitely not. Really? Wu He denied. Although he did have this intention, he still couldn't hold back his curiosity. He discussed it with his companions and decided to ask EC for his opinion, who knew that he would be caught by Xiao Xian the moment he arrived. He wouldn't admit it even if he was beaten to death. Although Xiao Xian's tone was calm, he was still worried that Xiao Xian would turn hostile the next moment and kill him right here and now. After hearing Wu He's words, Xiao Xian only chuckled, haha. Wu He became even more nervous under Xiao Xian's stare. He didn't know what Xiao Xian was trying to do. Was he going to lock him up in the cave again? You guys seem to have a lot of free time recently, Xiao Xian said slowly. No, we're planning to leave today. Wu He was about to promise that they would leave the Flaming River trading point as soon as possible when Xiao Xian said, I'm afraid you guys won't be able to leave. Wu He's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? Xiao Xian slapped Wu He's shoulder. I have a mission for you. After being slapped by Xiao Xian, Wu He's legs turned to jelly and he almost knelt down. He was really afraid that Xiao Xian would kill him. After hearing Xiao Xian's words, he became alert again. What? Xiao Xian pointed at Ganqie. Answer his question. Wu He turned to look at Ganqie, who was as invisible as a rock man. He was too focused on guarding against Xiao Xian just now and only noticed this person now. Who was this bald guy? He didn't look like someone easy to talk to. It was better to stay away from people like him. Wu He immediately categorized Ganqie as someone he should stay away from. The Chonglis were very observant in this aspect. However, looking at Xiao Xian, if he didn't agree to this mission, he might not be able to leave this place alive. All right. Brother, what do you want to ask? Ganqie retreated to a spot 3 steps away from Ganqie and Xiao Xian and asked carefully. It's about the other side of the sea. For example, the origins of some of the gangs. You can talk about the Chonglis too, Xiao Xian said. Not the Chonglis. Can you talk about other people? Sure. Ganqie will ask if you have any questions. Are you going to let me go after that? Sure. That's easy. Come, let me explain. Wu He waved at Ganqie. He didn't even need to prepare before he started to blabber on and on about some of his old enemies as examples. However, Ganqie didn't care. He just wanted to know how those gangs were formed and how those people felt. He's indeed more suitable to talk about this. EC smiled, but there was no mirth in his eyes. He turned to Xiao Xian and asked, Did you bring him back from the desert? EC had always wanted to know more about the desert. Unfortunately, he didn't have a way to get information. Xiao Xian was also about to ask about Yixiang from the Yi family when a whistle sounded. It wasn't a sharp warning whistle. It was a reminder. Someone was coming to the Yanjiao tribe. Let's talk about this next time. I'll go take a look. Xiao Xian turned to Ganqie and said, You stay here. Ganqie nodded. After Xiao Xian left, Wu He couldn't stay any longer. He wanted to go out and see what was going on. Since Xiao Xian wasn't here, the biggest threat was gone. He was emboldened again. Unfortunately, just as Wu He was about to leave, Gan Xie grabbed his arm. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Be gentle. Let's talk nicely. Don't hit me. Wu He retracted his foot. He was about to scold Gan Xie when he saw Gan Xie's bloodshot eyes. Suddenly, he felt a gust of cold wind behind him. On the other side, Xiao Xian arrived at the Flaming River Castle. Zheng Luo and Duo Kong were standing on top of the Flaming River Tower, looking into the distance with their binoculars. What happened? Xiao Xian asked. I can't see clearly, but it looks like someone is coming, Zheng Luo said as he looked into the sky. A white figure was flying towards them at lightning speed. It was Gigu's white falcon. The bird was holding a piece of cloth in its claws. There were words on the cloth. Xiao Xian opened it and said to Zheng Luo, I'll go back to the headquarters first. Keep an eye on Gan Xie. Go on. Zheng Luo also saw the words on the cloth. People from the D Mountain tribe were here. Chapter 762. Near the drumming tribe, crocodiles were sunbathing on the shore. Sensing something, the crocodiles that were floating on the surface of the water either dove back down or came ashore. Then, they stared at the surface of the river with emotionless eyes. The Flaming River was the widest river on the mainland. At this moment, there were a few long bamboo rafts on the surface of the river. Strangely, there were only 2 people standing on the raft. The rest of the rafts were filled with large shells of different shape. Regardless of their appearance, the beautiful patterns on the shells were something no one had ever seen in the Flaming River region. Even the drumming tribesmen, who often went into the water, had never seen such shells before. Who are those people? A drumming woman who was washing clothes by the river asked the person beside her. I don't know. Are they from downstream? Their target is the Yanjiao tribe. Another person patted the agitated crocodile and looked at the river cautiously. Those people are not normal. There are still people in the river. The drumming tribesmen who were good swimmers could see that there were still many people in the river, but they were all surrounding the rafts. The rafts were close to the other side of the river, so they couldn't see them clearly. Soon, they saw the Yanjiao people guarding the river walk over. At that moment, several figures shot out of the water, leaving trails of white water behind them. Ancestor! Someone exclaimed, What was that just now? Was that a fish? No, it was a human. The drumming tribesmen who saw the situation on the other side of the river took a deep breath. They couldn't care less about comforting the agitated crocodiles anymore. They rubbed their eyes and turned to look at the others. Did I see wrongly just now? Why did I feel like it was a fish that came out of the water? But when I looked again, all I saw was a human standing on the shore. Me too, I saw that too. The figures that jumped out of the water did look like fish. They couldn't see clearly what it was, but they could see the shape of a fish's tail. However, when those figures came ashore, they saw a human standing there. This made them very confused. At the same time, on the other side of the river, the Yanjiao tribesmen were shocked when they saw the D tribesmen come ashore. However, they had seen a D child with a human head and a fish body before, so they quickly calmed down. This time, the little girl Dian Dian was not among the people who came, but the person leading the team was still He Bian. Other than him, there were a few familiar faces, but the rest were unfamiliar faces. By the time Xiao Xian arrived, the D mountain tribesmen had already been invited up the mountain. The large shells they brought were all moved into the house. Seeing Xiao Xian, He Bian, who was talking to Gigu, quickly stood up with a grateful smile on his face. Elder Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian looked at He Bian and the other D mountain tribesmen in surprise. Their auras were different from the last time he saw them. They seemed stronger and stronger. Last time, when He Bian brought the seriously ill Dian Dian here, He Bian and the others were sick as well. It was just that their illness wasn't obvious. Now they were all cured. The reason they fell sick was because their fire seed had been swallowed. Now that they were all cured, It meant that their battle to protect their fire seed was a success. "Congratulations," Xiao Xian said. "I still have to thank you, head elder," He Bian said seriously. As he spoke, he also asked the other D Mountain tribesmen to thank Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian looked around and asked, "Where's Dian Dian?" "She's already a shaman of the D Mountain tribe. Our tribe just finished a bloody battle, and there are many things that need to be done. She has to stay in the tribe." He Bian told Xiao Xian everything that had happened after they returned to the D Mountain tribe. Gigu pursed his lips. When He Bian was talking to him just now, he didn't even tell him so much. He was even a little perfunctory. Now, he was telling Xiao Xian everything. He even told Xiao Xian about the changes in the D Mountain tribe's fire seed. What happened to it's inconvenient to talk about the fire seed? Did he take that as a fart? However, Gigu knew what the D Mountain tribesmen were thinking. They valued shamans more. In their eyes, Xiao Xian was the same as their shaman. As for chiefs and leaders, they were all secondary. After all, the shaman was in charge of the D Mountain tribe. In addition, Xiao Xian had helped them a lot. Instead of saying that the D Mountain tribe was giving gifts to the Yanjiao tribe to express their gratitude, it was more like they were giving these gifts to Xiao Xian. However, the changes in the D Mountain tribe were truly shocking. After they received advice from Xiao Xian on how to merge with the fire seed, they went back and swallowed the D fish's portion of the fire seed instead. Of course, things were much more complicated and cruel. They even had to change the deeply ingrained mindset of the D Mountain tribesmen. It wasn't an easy task. During a battle of life and death, people might be affected by the atmosphere. Their emotions would be stimulated and they would charge forward. When the battle was over, some people would overthink things. No wonder He Bian said that Dian Dian was very busy. The shaman needed to stay in the tribe to calm the people down. He also needed to make arrangements after the battle. Xiao Xian listened to He Bian talk about the battle between the D Mountain tribe and the D fish as he observed the D Mountain tribesmen around him. When He Bian mentioned Dian Dian, these people's expressions turned respectful. They had heard that the previous shaman of the D tribe couldn't survive the war. It was only after Dian Dian took over that they managed to solve the fire seeds problem. Are all of you in the same situation as Dian Dian? Can you transform into a fish? Xiao Xian asked. This is actually the same as awakening your totemic power. If you can awaken your totemic power, you can transform into a fish. These two are tied together, He Bian explained. Xiao Xian understood what He Bian meant. The D Mountain tribe's fire seed had swallowed the D fish's fire seed. Now that the two had merged into one, when they used their totemic power, they triggered another type of power in the fire seed. How was the merging process? Xiao Xian asked again. Although it was very difficult, it was a success in the end. I thought it would take a long time and Dian Dian was prepared for a long battle. However, she didn't expect it to be resolved so quickly. He Bian glanced at Xiao Xian when he said this. Back when Dian Dian was in Yanjiao, her transformation only lasted for one night. The devouring of the fire seed was similar to the transformation in Dian Dian's body. After the fire seed was resolved, Dian Dian said that the reason she was able to let the fire seed devour so quickly was probably because of Xiao Xian. When he thought about this, He Bian looked at Xiao Xian with even more respect. Actually, different people have different degrees of fish transformation. The stronger they are, the greater the degree of fish transformation. He Bian transformed as he spoke. The patterns on his body looked like they were covered in fish scales. His arms swelled and his upper arms became more obvious. His fingers had long, sharp nails and webbed nails. As for his lower body, his legs, which were originally standing on the ground, had turned into a fish tail. His entire body looked thicker and longer. This time, He Bian and the rest of the tribe were wearing different clothes from the last time. It was much simpler and they wore fish-skin skirts. The material was different from the ones Xiao Xian saw last time. There were large patches of fish scales on the skirt, and some parts of the skirt even had dark brown scales. This time, most of the D Mountain tribesmen were wearing this kind of fish skin. What is this fish skin? Xiao Xian asked. The D fish skin. It was obvious how much the D Mountain tribesmen hated the D fish. However, the D fish skin was indeed more suitable for the D Mountain tribesmen. It was more flexible and more suitable for swimming in water. He Bien told Xiao Xian about the gifts they brought this time. When they left last time, they promised that they would send gifts as soon as the matter was resolved. The D Mountain tribesmen rarely used wooden boxes. They preferred to use natural materials. After some processing, they could turn them into suitable tools. For example, the big shells that were used as shipping boxes this time. There were 10 big shells. 3 of them contained pearls and other gemstones, 3 of them contained seashells, and 4 of them contained food. Salted fish. Xiao Xian looked at the dried fish in the shells. He picked one up and looked at it. These are not big fish. We usually eat them, so we brought the ones that we think are tasty. He Bien scratched his head. We wanted to bring some big sea beasts, but it's too far away. It's not easy to deliver them. If you come to the D Mountain tribe, we'll catch as many as you eat. Xiao Xian didn't mind the size of these fish. Sea fish were good too. The people here mostly ate freshwater fish. Many of them had never eaten sea fish before. Oh right, there's one more thing. He Bien became serious. When we came here, we saw some strange people. We didn't understand what they were saying. They wanted to steal our things, so we killed them. He Bien took out a small golden plate. There were words engraved on it, but he didn't recognize the words. Xiao Xian took the plate. He Bien didn't recognize the words, but he did. They were words from the other side of the sea. Many people had already come to the Flaming River area. Chapter 763. Last time, when He Bien brought Dian Dian up the Flaming River to search for a cure, he had suffered because of his lack of experience. This time, when he brought Dian Dian up the Flaming River again, he learned to be smarter. He was even more vigilant of the people and things around him. Anyone who tried to get close to them, no matter who they were, would be killed. The D Mountain tribesmen might seem friendly in Yanjiao, and He Bien always had a smile on his face, but anyone with sharp senses could sense the murderous aura emanating from them. It wasn't directed at Yanjiao, it was just that they couldn't hide their murderous aura. Then, they looked at the wooden raft with the large shells. There were many bloodstains on it that hadn't been washed away by the river. Some belonged to them, and some belonged to the people and beasts they met along the way. Plus, the D Mountain tribesmen had just gone through a battle of life and death. They were at their peak, and they would kill anyone who dared to mess with them. He Bien didn't hide anything from Xiao Xian about the suspicious people they met along the way. After all, the D Mountain tribe lived far away, and outsiders rarely came here. However, it was different here in Yanjiao. If these people were really from the other side of the sea, they might be a threat to Yanjiao. It was better to be on guard against them. I almost forgot. He Bien came to the 3 large shells with all kinds of seashells, but these weren't what He Bien was looking for. He looked at the 3 large shells and opened one of them. Among the many smaller shells, there was a slightly larger shell that was about the length of an arm. This shell looked like 2 hands with their fingers crossed. The cracks were stuffed with something and water was seeping out. After He Bien carried it out, he used the sharp corner stone in his hand to skillfully pry at a few places. Then, with a little force, the shell was pried open. Inside, there were many small fishes with their bellies turned up. Xiao Xian pointed at the dead fishes and looked at He Bien in confusion. Dead fishes? No, these people aren't dead. They've just been fed medicine. It's like they're dead, He Bien said. When they were still in the D Mountain tribe, they would sometimes catch a lot of fish, but they couldn't kill them all at once. Some people didn't like to eat dried fish, So the D Mountain tribesmen found a medicine that could make the fish fall into a deep sleep after eating it. This way, the fish would stay fresh for a long time. When the D Mountain tribesmen wanted to eat them, they would take the fish out of the medicated water and put them back into normal water. After a while, the fish would wake up again. He bien got someone to fill a bucket with river water and put the 20 small fish into the bucket. The water in the shells had been sprinkled with medicine. As long as the fish were removed from the water, they would wake up again. However, if they don't wake up in 3 days, they might never wake up again. However, from the looks of it, they will definitely wake up within 3 days, he bien said. If it had really been killed by the potion, the fish would not have remained in this state. They often came into contact with fish, so of course they would know if the fish's body was normal. This is a gift from the shamaness. The last time she came here, she saw your lake and heard that you raised fish, so she caught some fresh ones. Oh, she also made some dried fish and put them in the shells. He bien put the 20 small fishes into the bucket and shook them one by one to confirm that there was really no problem. What kind of fish are these? Xiao Xian looked at them. These small, spindle-shaped fishes were only about the length of a palm. Their heads and backs were greenish-black, but they were darker in color. He couldn't tell what they were from their appearance. There were fishes that looked similar to them in the flaming river. They're cloaked turtles, because when they grow up, they look like they're wearing hard armor. Don't be fooled by how small they are now. When they're just born, they're not even as big as my fingernail. However, when they grow up, they're bigger than your house. Cloaked turtles are one of them. Also, cloaked turtles are enemies with the D fish in the sea. When they meet, they will fight to the death. In the past, we helped the D fish fight against the cloaked turtles. We also often go to the river to catch their young fish to eat because the cloaked turtles will go upstream to give birth. However, after giving birth, they will return to the sea. These small fishes grew up in the river, so I'm sure you can raise them here too. He bien told Xiao Xian everything he knew. Actually, they didn't know much about the habits of the armored turtles, but they used to be on the same side as the D fish. They were also enemies of the armored turtles, so they often observed their movements. What do they eat? Xiao Xian asked. They eat, he bien was stunned. They only knew that Yanjiao raised fish and other animals, but they didn't have any experience in this area. If they were hungry, they could just go fishing. There was no need to raise them. When Xiao Xian asked this question, he bien stuttered. Just put them in the water. They'll grow, right? Seeing he bien like this, Xiao Xian knew he couldn't get an answer from him. Sigh, they'll eat themselves in the water. When they're bigger, you can eat them. They grow really fast. He bien felt that Dian Dian was really smart. They didn't bring any large sea beasts here, but they brought these small fishes. The Yanjiao knew how to raise them. As long as they grew up, wouldn't they be as big as large sea beasts? Xiao Xian was speechless as he looked at He Bien, who was inexplicably proud of himself. If it was that easy to raise animals, it wouldn't have become a skill valued by the tribesmen. After delivering all the gifts, they followed Xiao Xian to the Flaming River Castle. The next day, He Bien left with his men. They were worried that something might have happened to their tribe. After all, the war had just ended. As for the Flaming River Castle, although they were surprised, they still preferred a quiet place with fewer strangers. The D fish didn't disappear. After they lost their fire seed, many of them escape. Now we D mountain tribesmen kill every D fish we see, He Bien told Xiao Xian before they left. After they returned, the D mountain tribe would truly start a new life. They just didn't know what the future held. Under He Bien's command, the 50 or so people jumped into the river. When their heads popped out again, they had totemic tattoos on their faces. They waved their thick, scaly arms at Xiao Xian and the others before diving back into the water. Under the river, dozens of water arrows shot downstream. They were much faster than boat. No wonder He Bien and the others didn't take too long to swim back. The bamboo rafts were pulled by humans. They thought that using wooden oars was too slow, so they unloaded the rafts on their way back. They didn't need to pull the rafts, so the rafts could move even faster. Xiao Xian returned to the mountain and moved the pearls and shells to Guizai's place. The other 4 shells and salted fishes were moved to Guigu's place for him to distribute the food. These were seafood. Many people in the tribe hadn't eaten them before. It didn't matter if they were used to the taste, they still wanted to try it. As for the armored fishes that He Bian brought over from afar, Xiao Xian thought about it and decided to dump them all into the new man-made river around the trading point. Because the Flaming River Bridge was directly across the Flaming River, it was more troublesome for ships to travel up and down the river. Hence, under Xiao Xian's suggestion, the Yan Jiao dug an arc-shaped man-made river channel around the Flaming River Castle and the planned expansion site. The 2 intersections of the river channel and the Flaming River were blocked with gate. This prevented dangerous fishes like piranhas from entering the river. Now, there were only some small aquatic animals that weren't a threat. Since Xiao Xian didn't know how to raise these armored fishes, he decided to dump them into the river. They didn't dump them in the man-made lake at the headquarters because it was the green duck's territory. Xiao Xian was worried that these armored fishes would be eaten by the green ducks before they could grow up. Even if the green ducks didn't touch them, Xiao Xian was still worried that these armored fishes would threaten the other fishes in the lake. After all, a fish that could fight against the D-fish definitely wasn't an ordinary fish. The 20 armored fishes in the bucket all woke up the day after He Bian and the others left. They didn't look very energetic, probably because the effects of the medicine hadn't worn off yet. Xiao Xian waited for a day. When he saw that their fins were moving more vigorously, he carried the bucket and walked over to the other side of the river. The pterosaur followed Xiao Xian, but the withered leaf birds didn't cross the bridge. Their range of activity was limited to the headquarters. They would be afraid if they left this area. There were too many unfamiliar scents on the other side of the river. After following them for a while, they returned to the headquarters and stood on the branches, chirping cha-cha. Unfortunately, the pterosaur ignored them and continued to follow Xiao Xian across the bridge. Don't eat these fishes. If I find out that you're secretly eating fish, I'll feed you to Caesar, Xiao Xian warned. It wasn't clear if the pterosaur understood, but it looked into the big bucket Xiao Xian was carrying, chirped, and continued to follow. Xiao Xian ignored it and continued to walk towards the man-made river. The Yanjiao soldiers guarding the bridge were also curious. They watched as the Great Elder carried the bucket and walked towards the river. When he reached the river, he poured the contents of the bucket into the river. "Great Elder, what are you pouring?" someone asked. "Fish. Be careful. Don't let anyone fish in the river," Xiao Xian said. The soldiers nodded. They would definitely keep their eyes open and keep an eye out. The 20 armored fishes were poured into the river and quickly disappeared. The speed at which they swam was completely different from when they were in the bucket. The sluice gate might not be able to stop these small fishes. Perhaps they could find a gap and swim out. After all, they were still small. However, Xiao Xian couldn't care less. He didn't care if these small fishes could really grow up. Thinking about Gan Xie and Wu He, whom he had left at EC's place yesterday, Xiao Xian carried the empty bucket and walked towards the trading point. After Xiao Xian left, the pterosaur spread its wings and glided to the side of the river. It stared at the water for a while, then let out a series of strange chirps. This was clearly different from its usual chirps. Every time it chirped, it would make a series of chirps. The last chirp was especially long. After a while, it didn't see any reaction from the river. Instead, it called the soldiers guarding the bridge over. "Don't eat the fishes in there. The Great Elder will be angry." The soldier waved a spear in his hand, trying to scare the pterosaur away. The pterosaur, who was standing at the other end of the river, saw that someone was coming. It flapped its wings and flew to a nearby tree. It looked at the river again and chirped a few more times. A greenish-black figure swayed on the surface of the water, then dove back into the water. Seeing this, the pterosaur flapped its wings and flew away. The soldiers at the other end of the river saw that the pterosaur was finally chased away and went back to guarding the bridge. Not long after, the pterosaur flew back with a fish in its mouth. It had caught it from the flaming river. The soldiers at the bridge watched as the pterosaur tore off the fish and threw it into the water. After a few times, it would chirp again. "What is it doing?" the soldier at the bridge asked his comrade. "Feeding fish to fish," the other guessed. "Are we going to do something about it?" "Let's not, right? It didn't eat the fish in there either. When the time comes, we'll just have to inform the Grand Elder and see what he decides." "That works too. As long as the pterosaur didn't eat the fish in the river, they wouldn't chase it away for now." At the same time, there was only one fish swimming in the man-made river. Soon, a second and third fish appeared. Not long after, there were more than 10 fish swimming in the river. After tearing the fish into pieces, the pterosaur threw the carcass into the river and flew back to the Flaming Horn headquarters without a care. There were too many unfamiliar auras here. It felt safer to stay in the headquarters, in the trading zone. When Xiao Xian arrived at Ici's place, Ici was writing something. When he saw Xiao Xian, he didn't stop writing. He just glanced at him and continued writing. Grasshopper was still curled up beside Ici. Although there were fewer spines on his back, they weren't completely gone. This proved that he was still very nervous. Wu He and Xiao Xian were where they were when Xiao Xian left yesterday. They were still where they were now. The only difference was that Wu He was standing up yesterday. Now, he was sitting listlessly on a wooden stool. Even his voice was weak. As for Gan Xie, he was exactly the same as yesterday. When he saw Xiao Xian come in, Wu He was instantly energized. He said to Xiao Xian, "Hurry up and take this person away. I will leave immediately. Really, I will never come to Yanjiao again." Yesterday, Xiao Xian said that Wu He could leave after answering Gan Xie's questions. However, Wu He didn't expect Gan Xie to ask him one question after another. He didn't expect Gan Xie to ask him one question after another. This guy doesn't sleep either. To Wu He, it wasn't a problem for him to not sleep for a night. However, he didn't want to face this stone face all the time. If he didn't answer, Gan Xie would use force to threaten him. His arm was almost broken. "How's it going?" Xiao Xian looked at Gan Xie. Gan Xie loosened his grip on Wu He's arm and shook his head lightly. He wasn't satisfied with Wu He's answers. At first, it was okay, but later on, it was full of lies. "I'm going to the Flaming River Castle. What are your plans?" Xiao Xian asked. "Let's go back." Gan Xie stood up and put on his hood. He followed Xiao Xian out the door. After he left, he glanced at Grasshopper. Grasshopper was so scared that all the thorns on its back popped out again. Gan Xie was just curious. He heard from Wu He that Grasshopper was a slave with both human and beast blood. Interesting. Half beastman, slave master, slave. It was completely different from the relationship between humans in the tribe. Gan Xie learned a lot from Wu He. After he returned to the Flaming River Castle, he went straight to the basement to lie in his coffin and think about life. Xiao Xian went to look for Zhengluo. "What's wrong? Is there a problem?" Xiao Xian saw Zhengluo and Duokang's serious faces. Zhengluo passed the animal skin scroll to Xiao Xian. "Take a look and you'll know." Xiao Xian took the animal skin scroll. The first thing he saw was the totemic patterns on it. This would let him know who sent it. The Lu tribe. Chapter 764. Now Yanjiao rarely contacted the Lu tribe. One reason was that it was too far away, and the other reason was that there was no need to contact them. The Yanjiao tribe had enough animals to raise. Most of them hunted in the forest, so they didn't need to trade with the Lu tribe. The Lu tribe didn't contact Yanjiao either. Xiao Xian knew that the Lu tribe didn't like fighting. They had always been good people, and several large tribes in the central region had always protected them, probably in case they needed the Lu tribe's help in times of shortage of food during a disaster. After the last disaster, the Lu tribe provided them with a lot of food. Although they rarely contacted each other, Xiao Xian had heard about the Lu tribe from the Longboat tribe and Feather tribe. It was said that the Lu tribe had a lot of complaints about Yanjiao. Why? It had to be related to the fire seed. The Lu tribe was probably one of the few large tribes that didn't want to merge their fire seed. Their main means of livelihood now was raising livestock, and they rarely had conflicts with other tribes. In the past, they had endured the provocations of the Wanshi tribe time and time again. To put it bluntly, they were cowards, but it was also a conservative and effective way. They knew how to survive stably. But now Yanjiao changed everything. The merging of fire seeds came from the Flaming Horn tribe. First, the major tribes merged their fire seeds, then the other tribes in the central region merged their fire seeds. Either voluntarily or under coercion, they all merged their fire seeds one by one. All of them set their sights on a new goal, breaking the current situation. When the Lu tribe was in trouble, no one could help them effectively. The Mang tribe and Eight Limbs tribe were cooperating with the Longboat tribe. The Longboat tribe took some of them out to sea, and the rest helped to look after the Longboat tribe, in case someone attacked the Longboat tribe's nest while the fleet was away. The Longboat tribe hadn't finished migrating yet, but they would definitely move to the estuary in the future. Their hearts had already flown out, and they didn't want to be trapped inland. Their goal was the sea. As for the Lu tribe, the three of them didn't have time to care about them. They could only help a little, but they wouldn't help them all the time. The Feather tribe reared birds and brought back a large number of birds from the forest. They were also very busy. The place where the Feather tribe was located was easy to defend and hard to attack. Outsiders who weren't familiar with the terrain would find it hard to cause trouble for the Feather tribe. Now, the Feather tribesmen only wanted to manage their own territory. They didn't care about anything else, so the help they could provide was limited. It was said that the Thousand Masks tribe wanted to learn from Yanjiao and build a city. They also had to guard against external threats. They were also very busy and had no time to care about the Lu tribe's crisis. As for the tribes on the grasslands, they wouldn't care about the Lu tribe. They didn't have much interaction with the Lu tribe in the past. After much consideration, the Lu tribe could only ask Yanjiao for help. The Lu tribe's situation might be worse than what's written, said Jingluo. It was only written on the animal skin scroll that the Lu tribe's beasts were being snatched away by outsiders, but since the Lu tribe was forced to seek help from Yanjiao, which was so far away, it was clear that the situation was critical. It also says that they want to move their tribe. Jingluo gestured for Xiao Xian to focus on the last few sentences. According to what was written, the Lu tribe wasn't sure if they really wanted to move. They just wanted to move. They're really simple-minded. Duo Kong was very dissatisfied. He was actually willing to let the Lu tribe come over. After all, the Lu tribe was good at rearing beasts. They might be able to raise more beasts. Yanjiao wouldn't mind having too many beasts. But the Lu tribe had a primitive fire seed. They wanted to bring it over? No way. Yanjiao wouldn't want to see this happen. After all, it wasn't their own fire seed. Even if it was a distance away, it would still affect their totemic warriors. Didn't they see that the tribes near Yanjiao all had merged fire seeds? Rain tribe, Drumming tribe, Taiha tribe, which one of them didn't have a merged fire seed? If the Lu tribe wanted to move over and rely on Yanjiao, that was fine. But first, they had to get rid of their primitive fire seed. Otherwise, if they brought it over, not only the Yanjiao people, but also the other tribes around them wouldn't be happy. They didn't choose to merge their fire seed. Until now, it seems like only the Lu tribe hasn't merged their fire seed, said Jingluo. Xiao Xian had already finished reading the words on the animal skin scroll. Today, the Lu tribe is like a chicken standing there, waiting for people to snatch it. It's a good thing they didn't merge their fire seed. If they did, all the beasts in their animal pens would have been snatched away and their people would be killed. What do you plan to do? Zheng Luo asked Xiao Xian. Let's not talk about whether they'll move or not. The Lu tribe has already listed their rewards to Yanjiao. As long as Yanjiao helps them, they'll give everything to Yanjiao. Thinking about the number of beasts listed in the scroll, Duo Kong sighed. They're really generous. The Lu tribe's rewards were already close to 2/3 of their total beasts. Maybe the Lu tribe wants to use this opportunity to get rid of the excess beasts. That'll make it easier for them to move, guessed Zheng Luo. Xiao Xian thought for a moment. I'll bring people over to take a look. Not for their rewards, but for the others. You want to use this to establish your authority? Zheng Luo immediately thought of this. I heard that people from the other side of the sea have appeared in the Flaming River area. We can use this as a warning. It's not just people from the other side of the sea. There aren't many people who can safely cross the sea. Only a limited number of people have their eyes on the Lu tribe. Other than the outsiders, most of them are tribesmen who have already started to change, Xiao Xian said in a low voice. Tribesmen? After merging their fire seeds, their ambitions are magnified and they're no longer content with their lot. They don't have to stay in one place, so naturally, they'll set their sights on other places, Xiao Xian said. After all, most of the people living on this land are tribesmen. You mean, other than scaring the outsiders, we have to do something to show the tribesmen who have other intentions? Zheng Luo understood. Sometimes, being infamous isn't a bad thing. Back then, Yanjiao's ancestors made a wise choice by making themselves infamous. Xiao Xian thought about the other tribe's impression of the Yanjiao people. Although the Yanjiao tribe was famous now, they weren't fierce enough. In such a big environment, their fierce reputation was a very good shield. At least it could deter those who had bad intentions from targeting the Flaming Horn tribe. Xiao Xian, when are you leaving? I'll go with you. Duo Kong rubbed his hands. He was already itching to go. You can't leave, Xiao Xian refused. What? Why can't I? Last time, Ta went with you to the desert. This time, you're going to the Lu tribe to rescue them. It's my turn now. Duo Kong remembered this clearly. Between him and Ta, one of them had to stay in the tribe. You have to help Zheng Luo keep an eye on the trading point. There are already people from other tribes nearby. Some of them are mixed in with the travel team. They're probably investigating the trading point, Xiao Xian said. Hearing this, Duo Kong didn't insist. Compared to the Lu tribe, the trading point was more important. Xiao Xian, are you bringing the guy in the basement with you? Duo Kong asked. If I don't bring him out, I won't feel safe leaving him here, Xiao Xian said. Gan Xie's situation was too special. If he suddenly went berserk, he could cause a mess in the Flaming River Castle. It was better to bring him out. Duo Kong thought about it and agreed. Only Xiao Xian could kill those puppets in the desert. Although Gan Xie was different from those slave puppets in some ways, at least he was revived because of Xiao Xian. Maybe if something happened, Xiao Xian would be able to think of a way to deal with it? It's good to bring him out, but Xiao Xian, have you noticed that he's getting more and more dumb? Duo Kong lowered his voice and said. Gan Xie's mood swings were already very low. He could maintain the same expression for the whole day. Duo Kong was curious. How could a person maintain the same expression all the time? Didn't he feel uncomfortable? They didn't stay in the Flaming River Castle any longer. Since they had decided to bring people to the Lu tribe, Xiao Xian had to inform the people at the headquarters and select some people to bring out. After exiting the trading point, Xiao Xian didn't cross the bridge directly. Instead, he walked further away. There was a suspension bridge over the man-made river. Xiao Xian continued walking from the bridge until he reached an inconspicuous place. There was no one else around. Xiao Xian looked around and walked to a spot. He lifted his foot and stomped twice. Not long after, the spot where Xiao Xian was standing was lifted up. A short and fat man with a full beard poked his head out. He was probably sleeping just now because his eyes were narrowed even smaller than usual. He looked out and yawned. This was a Yi tribesman. When he saw Xiao Xian, he immediately became attentive. "Grand Elder, is there anything I can help you with? Tell the others to be on the lookout for outsiders." Xiao Xian left him with this sentence. The Yi tribesman nodded profusely. He would definitely pass on this message, and he would do so as soon as possible. Xiao Xian's words meant that there were dangerous people coming from further away. Not only the other tribes living in the Flaming River region, but even the Yi tribesmen had to be on guard. After reminding the Yi tribesmen, Xiao Xian walked back. He sensed that the pterosaur was moving around where he poured the fish. When he walked over, he saw the pterosaur tearing apart a piranha fish and throwing its flesh into the river. It screamed as it did so. The guards around the stone bridge told Xiao Xian that the pterosaur had done this once before. This was the second time. Xiao Xian also saw more than 10 spindle-shaped figures swimming on the river's surface. They seemed to be fighting for food. Those were the fish he poured into the river. "Grand Elder, should we stop it in the future?" the guard asked. "No need. Just keep an eye on it." Xiao Xian didn't know why the pterosaur was doing this, but from the looks of it, the fish wouldn't starve to death with the pterosaur's food. After returning to the tribe, Xiao Xian had a discussion with the chief and shaman. The next day, Xiao Xian brought 500 people out. Gan Xie, who was wearing a hood and a cloak, also left with Xiao Xian. Just like what Xiao Xian said, he could go out and observe the changes in this world. He could also interact with more people from the other side of the sea. He could also ask more questions. After Xiao Xian left with his people, some people also left the Flaming River trading point, such as Wu He and the others from the Changlu tribe. Wu He wanted to leave to play somewhere else, but he saw Xiao Xian leaving with his people. 500 people was already a big commotion in most places where there weren't many people. It was obvious that something had happened. The Changlu tribe's curiosity was piqued again. Wu He and the others left the trading point and followed Xiao Xian's group. They wanted to see what was going on at the Lu tribe's place. Ever since Yanjiao migrated, the Lu tribe's place had become much more deserted. Strictly speaking, they couldn't be considered part of the central region. They were more towards the side because they needed a large amount of land to rear all kinds of animals. The competition for territory in the central region was too fierce. If one wasn't careful, they could start a war. The Lu tribe had lived here for a long time. As traditional tribesmen, they wouldn't want to leave if they had a choice. But now, the situation had changed and they had become a target for many people. In the second year of the disaster, their animal pens started to lose their animals. At first, it was just the pens at the edge of the region. Later, more and more animals went missing. Even the people guarding the pens started to get injured. Now, the situation was getting worse. They were still thankful that they had a fire seed to scare off those thieves. But this didn't solve the problem. Now, their animal pens were still being lost and their casualties were increasing. Some people even began to worry. What would they do if those people gathered together to attack the fire seed of their tribe? Their fire seed was still a primitive fire seed. If their fire seed was gone, their tribe would be gone too. There were 3 choices. The first was to go to the grasslands. There were many animal-rearing tribes on the grassland. There was also plenty of grass and water. But the good spots on the grasslands were already occupied. If they went there, they would have to fight with the tribes there for territory. The Lu tribe didn't want to go to war. They really didn't want to go to war because their tribe's population was decreasing due to external threats. War would reduce their population even more. They didn't want to go to war. The second choice was to go to the Thousand Masks tribe. The Thousand Masks tribe also knew about the Lu tribe's current situation, but they didn't help them. Instead, they watched coldly from the sidelines for a while and made a request. They were willing to accept the Lu tribe, but the Lu tribe had to merge with their fire seed. Other than that, there were other conditions, such as the distribution of animals in the pens. No matter what the conditions were, the Lu tribe couldn't agree immediately. The third choice was to go to the Yanjiao tribe. I still agree to go to Yanjiao. Yanjiao looked at the others present and said. He had interacted with Yanjiao many times. Compared to the Thousand Masks tribe, he trusted the Yanjiao people more. If we must merge with our fire seed, Yanjiao is definitely better than the Thousand Masks tribe, Yanjiao said with certainty. If Yanjiao can accept us bringing our fire seed over, it's not impossible to choose them, an old man said. But the others didn't agree, including Yanjiao. Don't even think about it. The Yanjiao people won't allow it. Do you know why the big tribes in the central region all let the other tribes merge their fire seeds? Because the fire seed makes them unhappy. Yanjiao sneered. Under the influence of the successive events in the tribe, he no longer cared about what he said. Even if the other party was an elder, he still had to wake them up when they said such childish thoughts. They couldn't see the situation clearly and dilly-dallied until now. As a result, the tribe's situation was getting more and more difficult. Even if they wanted to merge their fire seed, they didn't dare because there were too many people spying on them. Who knew if they would sneak up on them at a critical moment? Yanjiao was the one who urged the new chief to write the letter asking for help from Yanjiao. Yes, the previous chief of the Lu tribe was killed in a battle with outsiders. Not long ago, the tribe elected a new chief. Bai Xing was the strongest person in the Lu tribe, or else they wouldn't have chosen him at a time like this. Although he was strong, his foresight wasn't as far-sighted as the previous chief. Fortunately, he listened to Yanjiao's advice and wrote a letter asking for help from Yanjiao. Looking at the silent others in the tribe, Yanjiao was so angry that his head hurt. He walked away. You guys keep talking. Call me when you have a result. Walking out of the chief's house, Yanjiao looked at the people walking around outside. Their eyes were blank, and they looked absent-minded. Be alert! Yanjiao shouted. The people who were thinking about something were startled by Yanjiao's words. They looked around nervously, and when they found nothing unusual, they took a deep breath. In fact, they weren't so timid before, but a series of events, especially the death of the previous chief, had greatly damaged their confidence. Yanjiao looked at the state of those people and took a deep breath. He wanted to scold them, but after opening his mouth, he sighed and left. When they were facing the Wanshi tribe, they were able to live peacefully because they had the support of several other tribes in the central region. The Wanshi tribe didn't dare to do anything to them. But now the situation was different. Running away would not solve the problem. Those people were outsiders. Perhaps there were other people from other tribes who wanted to take advantage of the situation. But in Yanjiao's eyes, they were all predators. And the Lu tribe was like a stupid bird that was being raised. Facing threats from all sides, they still imagined that they could continue to live a peaceful life. No wonder the Yanjiao called their birds stupid birds. They were fat, but they didn't have strength or brains. Who was to blame for their current situation? The rule of survival in the forest was to catch the weak and stupid ones. Boss! A young warrior ran over from the animal pen, panting heavily. He looked angry. Boss, another stupid bird is missing. Now they also learned from the Yanjiao people to call their birds stupid birds, because Yanjiao also thought they were too stupid, so stupid that it annoyed him. Taken away again? Yanjiao felt tired in his heart. There were a lot of beasts in the animal pen. Although there were guards around, there were always loopholes. The people who were wandering around the Lu tribe would take advantage of these loopholes and destroy the animal pen. Then, they would use food to lure the beasts away. Among them, most of them were stupid birds. Judging from the marks on the edge of the animal pen, yes. The young man who came over was angry and helpless. How can they be so stupid? So stupid. Stupid. Yanjio wanted to cut open the heads of those stupid birds to find out what was wrong with them. How could they be taken away by a fruit? The ancestors of the tribe trained these birds from their wild state to birds suitable for breeding. But in terms of breeding, it was indeed successful. Yanjio used to think so too, but now, every time he heard that a stupid bird was taken away so easily, he only felt a sense of helplessness. If these birds were a little smarter, they wouldn't have been taken away so quickly. But things in the world were like this. Since they chose these stupid birds to be domesticated, they couldn't be blamed for being so easily fooled. Not thinking about that, Yanjio asked again, "Did anyone get hurt?" "No." "That's good. As for those stupid birds, let's just let them be." At the same time, not far from the Lu tribe, somewhere in the forest, about 20 people gathered together in a circle. In the middle of the circle was a bonfire. Inside the bonfire was the stupid bird that was just taken from the Lu tribe. These people laughed, and the language they spoke was not the common language of the tribe. Chapter 765. Yanjio walked around the animal pens. The guards didn't seem to be in a good state. Some of them were distracted while others were overly nervous. They lost a stupid bird today, so it was a good thing that no one was injured. Many times before, when they discovered thieves, the guards would fight with them. Casualties were inevitable. Of course, in order to prevent the animals in the animal pens from being stolen, these casualties were unavoidable. However, some people were still worried because they didn't know how long this situation would last. Humans would get tired eventually. They were in the open while the thieves were in the dark. The situation wasn't good for them. Yanjio pondered. He had already sent out the letter asking for help a long time ago. He didn't know if the Yanjiao people would come. Just as he was thinking, someone rushed over. "Boss, someone's here." Yanjio was overjoyed when he heard this. He jumped up and asked anxiously, "Are they Yanjiao people?" "No, they're from the Thousand Masks tribe." Yanjio's excitement faded when he heard that they were from the Thousand Masks tribe. He scratched his head with a conflicted expression. "Boss, aren't you going over?" "The chief and the others are all there," that person asked. "Why should I go? They won't listen even if I tell them." "No, I better go. I don't want them to be fooled by the Thousand Masks tribe." Yanjio hurriedly left the animal pen. When Yanjio went over, the current chief of the Lu tribe, Bai Xing, was already talking to the Thousand Masks tribe. However, the atmosphere wasn't good. The leader of the Thousand Masks tribe this time was Dian Fa. Yanjio had some understanding of Dian Fa. Although Dian Fa always had a smile on his face and seemed easy to talk to, he was actually a person who would change his expression at the slightest provocation. Now, the Lu tribesmen were really afraid to see him. Ever since they merged with their fire seed, the Thousand Masks tribe was no longer the same as before. No, it seemed that after merging with their fire seed, all the major tribes in the central region changed. At least, they didn't look like the Lu tribesmen. Yanjio sighed and walked in. He heard Dian Fa say that the Thousand Masks tribe wanted to take in the Lu tribe. If the Lu tribe agreed, they would leave a place for the Lu tribe to live in. However, the Lu tribe had to pay a price. They didn't ask the Lu tribe to hand over a certain number of animals to the Thousand Masks tribe every year. They only needed to hand over half of their animals. Hearing this, even the Lu tribesmen who had been silent couldn't sit still anymore. If they only gave the Thousand Masks 1/3 or even 2/3, they would be fine, as long as the Lu tribe could survive this crisis. If they gave away 2/3 of their beasts at once, they were confident that they would be able to increase their numbers quickly. However, if they had to give away half of their beasts every year, it would be difficult for the Lu tribesmen. "That's not what you said last time," an elder shouted loudly. Because he was too excited, his voice was a bit strange and sharp, sounding ear-piercing. The last time Dien Fa came to talk to the Lu tribe, he said that the Lu tribe only needed to give the 1,000 masks a third of the beasts they raised every year. Unfortunately, the Lu tribe wasn't willing back then, but now they were asking for more. Dien Fa smiled and glanced at the old man. When their eyes met, the old man subconsciously shrank back. Last time, our chief only asked for a small amount because our two tribes are familiar with each other. Who knew that you wouldn't even agree to such a small amount of things? This time, our leader is angry, so he added another request, Dien Fa explained calmly. But you're asking for too much. This is considered a lot? Why didn't you agree last time? Now that the situation has changed, you should know that it's impossible for things to be the same as before. You can either become independent or join a stronger tribe. Otherwise, you won't even be able to protect your fire seed. Dien Fa was very clear about the Lu tribe's current situation. He knew who the people around him were. He wasn't just trying to scare the Lu tribe. If things continued like this, the Lu tribe might not even be able to protect their fire seed. With the Lu tribe's character, it would be a miracle if they could protect their fire seed. Right now, the 1,000 Masks tribe had taken in many people from small to medium-sized tribes. They were currently building a city and lacked food. If it weren't for the fact that the Lu tribe was good at rearing beasts and had many beasts in their animal pens, the 1,000 Masks tribe wouldn't have accepted such a weak tribe. Dien Fa laughed coldly in his heart. Don't say that I didn't warn you. If this continues, you'll be at a disadvantage. Also, who knows when our chief will change his mind. Dien Fa finished the green fruit in his hand in a few bites and casually threw the core on the ground. He stood up and prepared to leave. Just as Bai Xing and the others were about to say something, Dien Fa's aura suddenly changed. Under his animal hide clothes, there seemed to be something moving in the muscles on his back. The meridians extended from his neck all the way to his face. With a cracking sound, white bones appeared on Dien Fa's face. His entire face was changing. His eyes widened and his pupils dilated. His brow bones protruded and his eyebrows were pressed down. In the blink of an eye, Dien Fa had already turned around. He stomped on the ground and crushed the core of the fruit he just threw. A large footprint was instantly left on the relatively flat ground. Dust was splashed into the air, almost drowning people like a fog. In the midst of the dust, Dien Fa's usually smiling face was no longer smiling. The white bones that protruded from his face covered his entire face. He looked extremely ferocious. You couldn't judge a 1,000 Masks tribe member based on their temperament. You couldn't judge them based on their usual appearance. You had to judge them based on their appearance when they used their totemic power. That was why Dien Fa's temperament was just like the specialized bones that covered his entire face. He looked like a ferocious beast that was about to go berserk. His aura was like a dark cloud that weighed heavily on the hearts of the Lu tribesmen. Seeing Dien Fa like this, Bai Xing was furious. You want to fight? Fine, let's fight. Just as he was about to make a move, he was held back by the elders beside him. Dien Fa glanced disdainfully at Bai Xing, whose face was red with anger. He had already told the chief that they couldn't speak nicely to the Lu tribesmen. The more they tried to be nice, the more they would drag things out until the crisis was over. Dien Fa didn't want that to happen. If he showed them a strong stance, they would naturally back down. Look, wasn't this the case now? A bunch of cowards. We need time to think, an elder said with difficulty. Wasn't the time I gave you last time enough? How long do you want to think? Dien Fa's cold voice rang out in the room. His tone was filled with impatience. Seeing that the Lu tribesmen were about to say something, Dien Fa waved his hand as if he was swatting flies. I'll give you 3 more days to think. After 3 days, I'll leave with my people. In other words, if the Lu tribesmen agreed to move after 3 days, Dien Fa would bring them to the Thousand Masks tribe's territory. If they didn't agree, he would wash his hands of this matter. They wouldn't care if the outsiders robbed or killed the Lu tribesmen. Since they didn't want to come to their territory, they wouldn't care about their business either. Dien Fa didn't allow the Lu tribesmen to say anything. In the end, Dien Fa brought the 500,000 Masks warriors to the Lu tribesmen's living quarters. They were treated to good food and drink. Yanjia watched from the beginning to the end. He didn't say anything. He remained silent with a dark expression on his face. He didn't want to see the elders' attitude, but he knew that they were worried. He didn't know what to say. Should he join the Yanjiao instead of the Thousand Masks tribe? But the Yanjiao people didn't show up. He didn't even know what the Yanjiao people were thinking. 3 days to the Lu tribesmen was too short a time. The entire tribe was filled with an anxious atmosphere. This atmosphere was getting stronger by the second. The Lu tribesmen gathered together and discussed for 3 days without sleep. They argued for 3 days until their throats were hoarse. They still hadn't come to a conclusion. Yanjiao had expected this, but there was nothing he could do. Although he was the leader of the tribe, there were still many people above him. His suggestion couldn't get the others to agree. Even Bai Xing, who had a good relationship with him, was pessimistic. As the sky gradually brightened, everyone became more and more agitated. It didn't matter if it was the people in the room or the other Lu tribesmen. The deadline was approaching. They had to give Dien Fa an answer. Early in the morning, Dien Fa's eyelids twitched. He had a feeling that something was about to happen. It was a bad feeling. After some thought, Dien Fa woke up all his subordinate. He was going to force the Lu tribesmen to make a decision. What if the Lu tribesmen don't agree? Are we really going to leave just like that? Asked a Thousand Masks tribesman. Dien Fa was distracted and didn't answer immediately. Instead, someone beside Dien Fa said, "Of course we can't just leave like that. No matter what, we have to bring some things back. Since the Lu tribe can't protect their own things, it's better to give them to us than to let the outsiders take them all." Wait for an opportunity to take them? Good idea. Everyone, remember to take as much as you can. Don't let the outsiders take everything. Dien Fa didn't say anything as he listened to the discussion. He had the same thought in his mind. Sooner or later, the Lu tribe would be robbed by those outsiders who gathered here. Why should they leave empty-handed? The atmosphere at the Lu chief's place became even more tense because of Dien Fa's arrival. What's the result? I don't want to wait here forever, Dien Fa urged impatiently as he sat down on a thick animal hide mat that his subordinates had brought over. It's not the deadline yet," whispered an old man. "Strictly speaking, the 3-day deadline would only end at noon. I don't care. Give me the result now." Dien Fa didn't want to give these people any more chances to delay. He didn't want to waste any more time. Dien Fa's eyelids twitched even harder. He raised his hand and pressed it against his eyelid. He made up his mind to solve this problem as soon as possible. The current chief of the Lu tribe, Bai Xing, was so angry that he clenched his fists. If it weren't for the elders beside him holding him down, he would have exploded already. Even as a chief, he had to endure this. It was so humiliating. He wanted nothing more than to die in battle like the previous chief. Bai Xing held his breath and didn't say anything. He looked at the shaman. The shaman sighed helplessly and said to Dien Fa, "Now isn't the best time to merge the fire seed." Dien Fa frowned. This was an excuse, but it was also the truth. If the Lu tribe failed to merge their fire seed here, they would be crippled. What would they do with a crippled tribe? "We can go over first. We can merge after we get there. We must merge," Dien Fa emphasized. The shaman looked at Bai Xing after hearing this. This was the only thing they could do. Under the urging of the elders, Bai Xing took a deep breath and suppressed his anger. He was about to say something when his expression suddenly changed. The others in the room also had the same reaction. Yanjiu stood up and rushed out. The Lu tribesmen might be slow when it came to other things, but they could sense the movements of their animals very quickly. As for the animals that were stolen, they were lured away on their own accord. When they left, they didn't make any movements at all. That was why the guards didn't sense them. At this moment, the Thousand Masks people didn't see much movement at the beast pens. However, it was a different story for the Lu tribesmen. What's going on? Are those outsiders here again? Yanjiu asked. I don't know. The person who was asked was still in a daze. What are you looking at? Go to the beast pens and see what's going on. Yanjiu roared. He was so angry that the veins on his forehead almost popped out. What time was it now? How could they still be in a daze? As he spoke, Yanjiu was about to rush towards the beast pens. It was safer for him to go there himself. These brats were probably under too much pressure. Their emotions were unstable. They might not be able to see anything. Just as he took 2 steps forward, Yanjiu saw one of his team members rushing towards him with a big black bull on the leash. That bull was the one they used to pull their carts. It was different from the other animals. This bull was more alert to its surroundings. It had been through a lot and was more sensitive to danger. At this moment, the black bull was anxiously kicking the ground with its hooves. Something's wrong. Yanjiu frowned. Then he thought of something and his face lit up. Could it be that the Yanjiao people were here? But what if it wasn't the Yanjiao people, but the outsiders in the forest? The man who led the black bull here looked at Yanjiu. Sometimes he was happy and sometimes he was sad. His face changed constantly. The black bull stomped its hooves and looked in a certain direction. Yanjiu looked in that direction. The sun had just risen, but it was already bright enough to illuminate the ground. Everything could be seen clearly. Yanjiu walked towards the outskirts of the tribe. The person leading the bull followed him. After staring at the forest for a while, he still didn't see anything. Yanjiu turned to look at the bull. When he saw that the bull was looking up into the sky, he immediately looked up. There was the shadow of a bird high up in the sky. Soon, the bird's shadow grew bigger and bigger. It flew across the sky like a gust of wind. A figure fell from above. Dian Fa and the other Lu tribesmen were also walking over. Of course, they saw this scene too. Boom! It was as if a huge rock had fallen to the ground. The moment the figure touched the ground, a loud bang rang out. Cracks spread out like a spider web. The soil was forcefully peeled off from the ground and shattered in an instant. Countless clouds of dust rose into the air, as if a thick haze had suddenly appeared. The ground seemed to be shaking. Even the soles of their feet were numb. Dian Fa blocked the dust and squinted his eyes. There was too much dust and he couldn't see clearly who was there. He could only hear footsteps approaching. Tap, tap, tap. As the footsteps got closer, the dust was blown away. When he saw who it was, Dian Fa's expression turned even colder. He gritted his teeth and said, "Yanjiao Xiao Xian?" Every word seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds. After he finished speaking, Dian Fa turned his head to look at Bai Xing and the other Lu tribesmen. His gaze was as sharp as a knife as he squeezed out a sentence from between his teeth. He gritted his teeth and said, "You really found Yanjiao people." The higher-ups of the Lu tribe kept their discussions a secret. Dian Fa only heard that the Lu tribesmen might ask the Yanjiao people for help. He didn't think that these cowards would actually invite the Yanjiao people over. If the Yanjiao Shaoxian was here, then the rest of the Yanjiao people would be here soon too. These Yanjiao people were so far away. Instead of building their own city, they came here to ruin the Thousand Masks tribe's plans. Dian Fa's face twitched. He looked at the huge crater where Xiao Xian landed and the cracks that extended outward. Then, he looked at Xiao Xian, who was walking over as if nothing had happened. Even if he didn't want to, he had to admit that trying to compete with the Yanjiao people in terms of physical fitness was just asking for trouble. He dared to go against the Lu tribesmen, but he didn't dare to offend the Yanjiao people. Especially when the person in front of him was the Yanjiao Grand Elder Xiao Xian, the person he didn't want to offend. No wonder his eyelids kept twitching since early morning. He had a feeling that something bad was going to happen. Dian Fa cursed the Lu ancestors in his heart. Aha! When Yan Jiu saw Xiao Xian, he felt as if the haze in his heart had finally dissipated. Seeing Xiao Xian here meant that the Yanjiao people really wanted to help them. Xiao Xian, you're finally here. Yan Jiu's smile was a little stiff under Dian Fa and the other 1,000 Masks people's sharp gazes, but his eyes were filled with excitement. He looked behind Xiao Xian and asked, "You're the only one here? The others are still behind us." "I'm here with another person," Xiao Xian said. "Huh? Where's the other person?" As soon as Yan Jiu finished speaking, he heard a scream from the forest. Not long after, he heard the sound of something being dragged through the bushes. A cloaked person was holding a stranger by the neck and dragging him over. No matter how the stranger struggled, hit him, or even scratched him with his fingernails, the cloaked person's grip didn't loosen at all. The cloaked person's other hand was dripping with blood. However, the stranger didn't have any visible injuries, so it was obvious that the blood was from someone else. Of course, this wasn't the main point. The Lu and 1,000 Masks tribesmen all stared at the sword in the cloaked person's chest. The sword had pierced through the cloaked person's body, but there wasn't a single drop of blood. As the wind blew, the linen cloak at the man's chest stuck to his body, allowing others to see clearly that the sword had really pierced through the man. However, there wasn't a single drop of blood on the cloaked person's body. He was even able to walk over, as if he wasn't affected at all. "Did you get hit?" Xiao Xian asked. "I'm fine." An emotionless voice sounded. Yan Jiu and the others were dumbfounded. How could he be fine after being pierced through? Just as they were thinking about this, they saw the cloaked man use his bloody hand to grab the hilt of the sword in his chest and pull it out. After pulling it out, he held the sword in his hand and continued to drag the person as if nothing had happened. Yan Jiu and the others were speechless. The 1,000 Masks tribesmen were speechless. Even the person who was being held by the neck was stunned. He forgot to struggle. The surroundings were deathly silent, and even the air seemed to be filled with an icy chill. Everyone who saw this scene subconsciously shrank their neck. Dian Fa's eyelids weren't the only thing that was twitching. His eyes were twitching nonstop. What kind of monster was this? Chapter 766. When Gan Xie dragged Gan Xie over, both the Lu and 1,000 Masks tribesmen hurriedly moved aside, keeping at least 10 steps away from him. The scene just now was too strange. They hadn't completely regained their senses, and they couldn't understand it. Before their minds could catch up, their bodies had already stepped aside. This was a reflexive action in the face of danger. Xiao Xian looked at the sword in Gan Xie's hand. It was obviously from the other side of the sea, different from the style used by tribesmen. However, the craftsmanship was not as good as the Gongjia families, so he couldn't tell which organization these people belonged to. "How did you get hit?" asked Xiao Xian. With Gan Xie's abilities, he shouldn't have been stabbed so easily. "I wanted to ask something but that person suddenly attacked," said Gan Xie calmly. Xiao Xian didn't ask who stabbed him. Judging by the blood on Gan Xie's hand, he knew what happened to that person. However, after this incident, Gan Xie definitely understood that the people outside were not as nice as the people in Yanjiao. People outside the tribe would kill at the slightest disagreement. Xiao Xian looked at the people around him, then asked Yanjiao, who he was most familiar with, "Is there a place to rest? This isn't a good place to talk." Yes. Yanjiao nodded quickly, then informed by Xing before bringing Xiao Xian to a house. Xiao Xian, does your friend need treatment?" Yanjiao glanced at the silent Gan Xie and asked Xiao Xian. "No, this small injury is nothing to him," said Xiaoxian. Bai Xing and Dian Fa, who were further away, also heard Xiaoxian's words. They were even more shocked. This small injury? Gan Xie was stabbed. How could it be a small injury? Dian Fa's face twitched, but he didn't say a word. He didn't know what to say either. It seemed like the Lu tribe was really going to ask Yanjiao for help. Fight with Yanjiao for a person? Dian Fa didn't plan to do that for now. He couldn't find the best solution for the time being, so he glared fiercely at the Lu tribesman. After Xiaoxian walked away, he asked, "Are you going to join Yanjiao?" The elders of the Lu tribe looked away awkwardly. They didn't want to meet Dian Fa's eyes, nor did they say anything. In fact, they were also conflicted. The Yanjiao people would definitely have other demands. If their demands were even more unacceptable than the Thousand Masks tribes, what should they do? Or perhaps, with the help of the Yanjiao tribes, they could get through this calamity first. Some elders of the Lu tribe agreed. According to their thinking, migrating the tribe or merging the fire seed was a matter of life and death for the tribe. How could they make such a hasty decision? He had to think things through. To put it bluntly, they had to drag it out for as long as they could. They had to get through this difficult situation first. While Dian Fa was hesitating about whether to stay in the Lu tribe and observe, Yanjiao had already told Xiaoxian about the situation. Just as Xiaoxian had predicted, the Lu tribe situation was worse than what was written in the letter. However, Xiaoxian was puzzled. They were already in such a situation, but these people were still hesitating. What are your chief and shaman thinking? If they don't agree to merge the fire seed, we can't let the Lu tribe go. Xiaoxian also told them about Yanjiao's request. Merging the fire seed was a prerequisite. Otherwise, there was nothing to talk about. Of course, if the Lu tribe didn't choose to merge the fire seed, they would only come to help the Lu tribe clean up the surrounding forest. Then, they would pack up and leave. They wouldn't care about anything else. Yanjiao also had a headache. He was actually in favor of merging the fire seed. Although they wouldn't get used to it in a short period of time, the other tribes had already merged their fire seed. If they stayed the same, their fire seed would become their weakness. However, the elders of the tribe didn't agree. How about this? Go and talk to your chief, shaman, and the elders. Tell them about Yanjiao's conditions. Xiaoxian didn't want the Lu tribe to go. It would be good if they went, but if they didn't go, Yanjiao wouldn't lose anything. After all, they didn't lack food. Yanjiao let Xiaoxian rest here first. He would go and talk to the people in the tribe. What he didn't tell Xiaoxian was that the Lu tribe would definitely migrate. They couldn't survive here anymore. Putting aside the troubles around them, just the internal problems of the Lu tribe. They raised livestock for a living. The ancestors of the Lu tribe settled here because they found a pond that was enough for them to live and raise livestock. However, the pond had dried up during the disaster. At that time, the previous chief suggested that they migrate. Unfortunately, the elders of the tribe strongly opposed it. Later on, there was also the matter of the fire seed, so it had been delayed until now. Yanjiao's head hurt when he thought about the looks of those elders in the tribe. Yanjiao relayed Xiaoxian's words to the others. Some of them agreed to merge with the fire seed and move to Yanjiao. Some objected because they didn't want to merge with the fire seed. There were also some who didn't agree or disagree. It was a stalemate again. Bai Xing sat at the head of the table and didn't say anything. His eyes were staring at a certain spot, but they weren't focused. He allowed the others to argue while he thought about other things. After a while, Bai Xing suddenly asked, "When will the other people from Yanjiao arrive?" Yanjiao, who was also in a daze, was nudged by someone beside him. He came back to his senses and said, "About half a day. They'll be here by tonight at the latest." Bai Xing grunted and didn't ask any more. He continued to daydream. After Bai Xing's interruption, the elders stopped arguing. Someone asked Bai Xing a question, but Bai Xing ignored it. His rough face still had a look that said, "I'm daydreaming, don't bother me." Knowing that Bai Xing, the new chief, was in a bad mood, the elders didn't look too good either. For a moment the room fell silent. The sun gradually set. Xiao Xian went to take a look at Ganxie. The person who was dragged back by Ganxie looked like he had nothing left to live for. That person thought that he would be forced to reveal some secrets after being dragged back. He planned to grit his teeth and not say anything, or make up some lies to fool these tribesmen. However, he didn't expect that this person would ask him questions that he didn't even know how to answer. Which tribe is your ancestor from? When did your tribe merge with the fire seed? What does it feel like to merge with the fire seed? Why did you abandon your tribe and join other groups? Why did the tribe disband? How can a person not have a tribe? That person really didn't know how to answer these questions. Why did the tribe disband? How would he know? As long as he was happy, why did he need a reason? He thought that Ganxie was crazy. His way of thinking was like that of a stubborn and conservative tribesman. Why must people exist in the form of a tribe? These tribesmen were a bunch of country bumpkins. In the end, that person got impatient and cursed at Ganxie's ancestors. Ganxie wasn't satisfied with this answer. The result of Ganxie's dissatisfaction was that the person's neck was broken. "I'm going out for a while," Ganxie said. "For what?" Xiao Xian asked. "Ask someone else." Ganxie put on his hood and walked out. There were still many people in the forest around the Lu tribe. He had to use this opportunity to ask more people. When the Yanjiao people came, they would probably be scared away. Whether it was people from the other side of the sea or tribesmen who had merged with the fire seed, he wanted to ask them all. He especially wanted to ask the tribesmen who had just merged with the fire seed. He wanted to know their thoughts. Ganxie was very persistent in this aspect. Xiao Xian didn't stop him. "Be careful of your head." After all, Ganxie wasn't a puppet. Puppets could still be controlled to move without a head, but Ganxie didn't know what would happen to him if he lost his head. Not long after Ganxie left the Lu tribe, Xiao Xian heard an eagle cry in the sky. "They're here." Not far from the forest outside the Lu tribe, a group of people was running towards them. They even rested for a while before coming here to adjust their condition. The movement of 500 people was naturally different from that of Xiao Xian and Ganxie. The people hiding in the forest had already noticed them. "It's the Yanjiao people." Some people could recognize them from the totemic patterns on their bodies. "Are the Yanjiao people that strong?" This was someone who wasn't familiar with Yanjiao. Who cares if they're Yanjiao people or other people? Our target is the Lu tribe. This was a group of people from the other side of the sea. Some people were already scared and started retreating further away. However, they didn't leave. Their greed made them want to take advantage of the situation. Some people moved closer to take a closer look. In front of the group, there was a bird about the same size as the Lu tribe's dumb bird. It didn't have big wings either, but its body wasn't as fat as the Lu tribe's dumb bird. Its head was even bigger. "What kind of bird is that?" Someone whispered to his companion. "I don't know, but I'm sure we can roast it like the Lu tribe's birds." The person who spoke had just stolen a dumb bird from the Lu tribe this morning. He was still holding a bone with meat on it. As he chewed on the meat in his hand, he observed the group that was passing by. "Someone's here," Guang said while riding on the forest racos. "I can smell it," the others beside him said. The group of people in the forest didn't seem to want to hide completely. Otherwise, the Yanjiao group wouldn't be able to smell the roasted meat. "How arrogant!" Guang glanced at the forest. He reached for an arrow from his quiver and knocked it on his bow. The bowstring creaked as he pulled it. Bang! The vibrations of the bowstring seemed to be plucking at the nerves in one's brain, causing them to tremble. The arrow pierced through the gaps between the branches and broke through the leaves in front of it. The leaves that came into contact with the arrow were instantly pulverized. Before the sneer of the person who had been talking to his accomplice could fade away, he was interrupted by a whistle-like sound that rapidly drew closer. Bang! The arrow pierced into a tree trunk that was thick enough for 5 people to encircle. The entire arrow sank into the tree trunk. On the other side of the tree, the person who was leaning against the tree widened his eyes and looked down at his chest. The roasted meat in his hand fell to the ground. The green arrowhead had pierced through the tree trunk and left a hole in his chest. There was still red blood on the arrowhead. The blood flowed out along the arrowhead and dripped onto the ground. The other people around them couldn't help but cry out in fear and anger. However, when they heard the footsteps coming their way, they didn't dare to stay here. They didn't even care about their companions who were still breathing. One by one, they threw away the roasted meat in their hands and turned to run into the distance. The surrounding birds were frightened by the murderous aura of the arrow. They screamed and flew into the sky. Dien Fa stood at the border of the Lu tribe and looked at the flock of birds in the forest. His eyes were dark and unreadable. Soon, he saw a group of people coming out of the forest. There were 2 fearsome beasts in the lead. One looked like a bird while the other looked a little strange. It looked like a tiger or wolf in the forest. However, it had hooves and made a clattering sound when it stepped on the ground. Bai Xing and the others who were discussing things in the house quickly came out when they heard the commotion. "We're finally here." Xiao Xian walked over and looked at the net bags in the group. Guang and the others saw this and dragged the net bags over. Inside were people who were already dead. Their bodies were either cut by sharp weapons or shot by arrows. There was even a person with a hole in his chest. Blood was still flowing out. These are. Bai Xing looked at the people in the net bags. "We hunted them when we passed through the forest," the person dragging the net bags said. "Oh right, Grand Elder, we saw Gan Xie when we passed through the forest. He said he would be in the forest tonight and told us not to worry about him," a Yanjiao warrior said. "Okay, you all must be tired from the journey. Rest first," Xiao Xian said as he looked at Yanjiao. Yanjiao had already arranged accommodation and food. When he saw Xiao Xian looking at him, he quickly said, Yes, everyone, follow me. You must be tired. Have some meat soup." "Brother Xian, what about it?" Guang pointed at the forest raccoons. Xiao Xian thought for a moment and said to Yanjiao, "Didn't you say that the stupid birds in your animal pen are often stolen? Let Xiao Jing go there. There's a nest there anyway. It can be guarded." Yanjiao wanted to say, "Your bird eats meat." However, he paused and said, "Okay, bring it to the animal pen." Xiao Xian patted the forest raccoon's head with the back of his knife and said, "Guard it well. Don't worry, Brother Xian. I told it along the way." Guang flipped his braid and smiled brightly. Yanjiao was confused. What did they say to the bird along the way? He suddenly changed his mind. Was it really okay to put this ferocious bird in the pen of those stupid vegetarian birds? Guang took the forest raccoons and followed Yanjiao to the animal pen. The animal pen for the stupid birds occupied a large area in the Lu tribe. There were also many bird nests. Because of the continuous theft, many bird nests were empty. When Guang led the forest raccoons into the animal pen, a group of stupid birds who were walking casually ran away as soon as they saw a stranger. Those who were squatting in their nests also ran away, so there were more bird nests empty. "Choose one to sleep in." Guang patted the forest raccoons and said. Yanjiao was frightened to see the big-headed ferocious bird raise its claws and look at the bird nests one by one. Then it chose the biggest one and walked in. After stepping on it, it squatted down. "Okay, let's go." Guang didn't look at it anymore and turned to leave. Is it really okay?" Yanjiao was still scared. "It's definitely okay. It won't eat. If there's one less, you can deduct it from Yanjiao's reward." Yanjiao didn't say anything. So these people were so eager to guard the animal pens just to get their reward from Yanjiao? Yanjiao's people had already arrived. It was time for the Lu tribe to make a final decision. Dien Fa didn't leave yet. He was waiting for the Lu tribe's decision. Xiao Xian wasn't in a hurry. No matter what the Lu tribe's decision was, they would rest for the night and clean up the forest tomorrow. Their goal wasn't just to decide if the Lu tribe would move or not. In the forest, the people who were hiding in various places were already starting to get anxious. Should they stay here and wait for a chance to make some money, or should they run away first? Judging from the looks of it, Yanjiao wasn't easy to deal with. Chapter 767. There were fewer birds in the forest at night, probably because there were people hiding there. The Lu tribesmen used to hear nocturnal birds chirping at night, but now there were fewer nocturnal birds. Therefore, the night was much quieter. Tonight was the quietest night. In the past, there would occasionally be strange shouts or wild laughter in the forest. Tonight, those sounds were gone. The Lu tribesmen knew that it wasn't because the people hiding there had left, but because of the arrival of the Yanjiao people. Those people had all gone into hiding. They watched quietly in the dark. They didn't give up on this fat piece of meat so easily. In the forest, a few people hid in one place, looking in the direction of the Lu tribe. "Hey, do you guys think we should go to the Lu tribe's animal pen tonight and drag one out to eat? I'm a little hungry," someone whispered. In the past, when they were outside, they didn't have to eat a lot of good food. They just ate whatever they could find, as long as they didn't starve to death. In order to get more good food, they didn't care that much about food. But after living near the Lu tribe for a while, their appetites had grown. Ordinary food really couldn't satisfy them. It was hard to go from luxury to frugality. When the others heard this, they also thought of the Lu tribe's birds covered in meat and the smell of barbecued meat. Suddenly, their saliva secreted faster. Even the fragrance of the flowers in the forest at night smelled like barbecued meat. "Why don't we go take a look?" They were about to go to the Lu tribe's animal pen when they suddenly stopped. They frowned and looked in a direction. They didn't wear much clothing, and more than half of their limbs were exposed. Their skin could become extremely sensitive, especially at night. Their hair stood on end, but this didn't mean that they were afraid. Unlike other people, these people used the hair on their skin to perceive the movements around them at night. They were like the tentacles of a beast, able to perceive the airflow fluctuations caused by the friction between the bodies of the people around them and the air. At this moment, they felt someone approaching. "They're here." Not long after, they heard the sound of footsteps. It wasn't someone from their group. The footsteps sounded strange. The time between each step was almost the same, and the strength of each step was similar. Just listening to the sound gave them a strange feeling. Who wouldn't be cautious when walking at night? Even if they had better eyesight than ordinary people at night, they still had basic precautions. However, the other party seemed to have no scruples at all. He was neither hurried nor slow, and every step he took was like a stroll. What was his motive for suddenly appearing here? Soon, they saw a figure slowly walking over from the forest in the distance. Other than the sound of footsteps and the soft sound of his calves rubbing against the grass, there was no other sound. He couldn't even hear the sound of breathing. They thought that this was the other party's method of concealment at night. The person didn't wear many clothes and was bald, so they didn't recognize him. Whoosh! A branch shot out from a nearby tree like an arrow and pierced into the person's foot. This meant that he had stopped. Gan Xie looked at the branches in front of him, and then looked up at the trees around him. There was no one around, but he knew that there were people hiding in the trees. "I have a question," Gan Xie said calmly. There was no sound around them. They could only hear the soft sound of insects crawling on one of the trees. Gan Xie continued asking, "Are you people who left your original tribe and gathered together again?" He could feel that the blood flowing through their bodies was similar. The person hiding in the tree initially thought that the other party was also one of the people who had designs on the Lu tribe and came over to discuss cooperation. Who would have thought that he would ask such a question? Was he crazy? While Gan Xie was waiting for an answer, a black figure suddenly jumped out from the tree closest to him. The other party had a knife in his hand. The curve of the blade was exaggerated, almost forming a circle. The blade was covered in a layer of black so that it wouldn't reflect any light at night. The speed of the other party's knife was extremely fast. It moved around in the air several times like a ghost, making it difficult to see where the knife would land. The blade sliced through the air, making a whooshing sound. Gan Xie knew that this person was aiming for his neck. Many people would aim for fatal areas such as the heart or the carotid artery. After all, no matter how strong a person's body was, it would be difficult for them to survive such an injury. At first, Gan Xie didn't want to dodge. It wouldn't matter if his carotid artery was cut. He didn't have any blood to lose anyway. However, when he thought about how Xiao Xian said that he wouldn't be able to survive without a head, Gan Xie hesitated. The knife looked like it was going for his neck, but what if it cut his head off? Everything happened in an instant. From the other party's point of view, Gan Xie only paused for a moment. Soon, Gan Xie dodged the knife. He wasn't afraid of the knife at all. He shook his shoulder and collided with the other party. Gan Xie's body was stronger than the Yanjiao people. His bones were even harder than the Yanjiao totemic warriors. The person who attacked Gan Xie didn't look weak either. In fact, if Gan Xie and the other person were to be compared at the same time, the other person looked stronger. However, at the moment of collision, the sound of bones breaking could be heard. The other person was sent flying and landed heavily on the trunk of a tree. The crown of the tree shook from the impact. It looked like the leaves were about to fall off. The knife didn't injure the other party. Instead, one of the people on his side was sent flying. At this moment, the other people hiding in the tree were shocked. After a short moment, they surrounded Gan Xie. They could tell that Gan Xie was a very strong person. They had to work together to win. They didn't think about what would happen if they lost. After all, no matter how strong a totemic warrior was, he would be crippled under such a joint attack. The sound of joints cracking could be heard. Long claws popped out like the claws of wild beasts. It wasn't clear if the claws were special to their bones or if they were made of metal. They twisted their wrists and their fingers were like spinning knives. They slashed towards Gan Xie. Wherever they went, the air hissed. They were like poisonous snakes hunting in the dark. There were also people with strange knives in their hand. They slashed towards Gan Xie with a cold light that couldn't be seen in the dark. The 5 of them attacked Gan Xie with the weapons they were used to. The sound of punches and kicks, the sound of knives hitting hard objects, the sound of bones breaking, and the screams of people mixed together. It sounded like the cries of ghosts and howls of wolves. Even the trees in the area were shaking. The sound spread to the Lu tribe. The animals in the animal pen started to get restless. What happened? The Lu tribe guards looked over nervously. They didn't know what was going on. No one went out at night, right? No one. We don't go out at night. The Yanjiao people didn't go out either. That's good. Don't worry about it. Just guard your place. Don't worry about anything else, the leader said. Although he said that, the guards kept looking over at the forest from time to time. They wondered what was going on. Did the people hiding in the forest start fighting? Or did someone else come over? Ever since the incident happened, the Lu tribesmen had been under a lot of pressure. Every movement made them overthink. While the Lu tribe guards were distracted, not far from the animal pen where the dumb birds were kept, 3 figures took advantage of the fact that the moon was obscured by the clouds. They approached the animal pen. Although they were curious about what was going on in the forest, they knew that this was a good opportunity to make a move. While the noise attracted the guards, they would be able to make a move on the animal pen where the dumb birds were kept more smoothly. During this period of time, they had been working almost every day. They took turns. Today it was one person, tomorrow it was another person. Tonight it was the 3 of them. Even if the Yanjiao people came today and knew that the security here would be much tighter, they still couldn't help but feel greedy. These days they had been living too well. They didn't care whether the Lu tribe's fire seed was extinguished or not. They were just used to coming over to lead a bird full of meat away when they were hungry and eating to their heart's content. Whenever they were hungry, they would come to the Lu tribe's animal pen. When they first came, they were a little more cautious. They were careful when they stole things to avoid the Lu tribesmen chasing after them. But later, they realized that more and more people were targeting the Lu tribe. The Lu tribesmen no longer went out. They just stayed in the tribe. Even if they heard provocations, they rarely went out. That was why they became bolder and bolder. They would even laugh out loud while eating and drinking. Some of them would even throw bones at the Lu tribesmen after eating and laugh at them. The Lu tribesmen were so angry that they stomped their feet. The Lu tribesmen didn't dare to come out. This was the consensus of everyone. They had nothing to fear. As for today, although they saw the Lu tribesmen coming to help, they still chose to come. They were hungry. It was just a test. It should be fine. They told themselves this in their hearts. At night, when the patrolling guards left, they approached the beast pens with familiarity. First, they observed their surroundings, but they didn't see anything different around the beast pens. The guards were still the same, and there wasn't anything different from before. Sure enough, it was all a bluff. One person laughed silently. He caught a fragrant fruit thrown by his companion behind him and tied it with a straw rope. Then, he cut a few holes on the fruit to let the juice flow out. When the wind blew, the fragrance of the fruit flew into the distance. In the direction the wind blew, they could vaguely see a bird's nest on a tree. There was only one bird in it. The other birds were a little further away. They were cautious. They knew that they couldn't attract too many stupid birds at once. Otherwise, they would be too big of a target and easily alert the guards of the Lu tribe. The few times they were discovered by the Lu tribesmen, it was because they attracted too many stupid birds at once. So they were discovered by the guards, and it took them a lot of effort to escape. So, since then, they learned to be smart. Every time, they would pick a bird that was a little further away from the flock and nested in a bird's nest alone. The person holding the fruit approached the fence of the animal pen and skillfully threw the fruit towards the blurry figure. The fruit was tied with a straw rope. It drew an arc in the air and stopped about 10 meters away from the bird's nest. Because the ground was covered with grass and the fruit was soft, it didn't make too much noise. Although stupid birds were stupid, they had a good sense of smell. They had already learned the technique of stealing bird. They knew the best distance and the fruit landed on the predicted landing spot. Tap tap tap. The sound of the bird's big toe stepping on the ground rang out. The person was happy. It's coming. Many times, even if they avoided more birds, the fragrance of the fruit might still attract 2 or 3 birds at once. They still had to spend a lot of effort to steal the birds out. However, this time, there was only one bird that was attracted by the fragrance of the fruit, and no more birds came over. That was even better. It saved them a lot of trouble. Judging from the sound, this bird was quite big. That made them even happier. He hid behind the fence. Because he couldn't see the situation inside, he could only judge by the sound. There was no one else. The patrolling guards didn't come. The bird had already stopped at the place where they threw the fruit. The person holding the straw rope felt the rope in his hand being pulled. He knew that the bird was about to eat, so he quickly pulled the rope out. But when pulling the rope, he had to be skillful. He couldn't be too fast. If he was too fast, the stupid bird wouldn't chase him at night. But if he was too slow, he would be eaten by the stupid bird. Thinking of this, the person was quite proud. One person concentrated on pulling the rope, listening to the sound and judging the behavior of the stupid bird. The other person was breaking the fence. Behind them, there were still people on guard to see if there were any patrolling guards from the Lu tribe. "Hurry up!" someone behind urged. The two people who were squatting beside the fence were also anxious. The Lu tribe's guards were already here. The person pulling the rope sped up. After pulling for a while, he stopped. When he felt the rope was struggling, he continued pulling. The other person made a hole in the fence. Because these fences were often broken, the Lu tribe repaired them in a hurry. The trees they used now weren't very good, so the gaps between the logs were bigger. This made it easier for them to break the fences. They cut the ropes connecting the logs, pulled out the logs that could be pulled out, and sawed the ones that couldn't be pulled out. As long as they put something on the saw, the sound of sawing would be reduced a lot. The sound of a big toe stepping on the ground was getting closer. Judging by the sound, I know it's a big guy. The person sawing the log whispered. Actually, if they had more strength, wouldn't it be easier to just carry one out? Unfortunately, they didn't have the strength, so they could only try harder. The person pulling the rope didn't laugh. He always felt that today's bird was a little different from the previous ones. He stretched his neck and looked through the hole in the fence. He vaguely saw a bird's shadow. Although it was a little different from the previous ones, it wasn't as fat, but it shouldn't be a problem. They didn't see the Yanjiao team today. They only saw the tail of the team that had already entered the Lu tribe's territory, so they didn't think of anything else. Hurry up! The person behind them urged again. I know. Okay. Prepare the rope. Before the man could finish his sentence, he felt the straw rope in his hand being pulled inwards by a strong force. He was caught off guard and crashed into the fence that had not been pulled out yet, making a loud bang. What's going on? The person next to him, who had just finished sawing wood, asked. However, just as he finished speaking, a figure suddenly rushed out of the broken fence like a gust of wind. A foot with a big toe stomped down from top to bottom. Ah! A scream suddenly sounded. The stupid birds in the animal pen were shocked and gathered in the middle of the pen. After little Jingzi stepped on the man, it didn't give him any time to get up. Its two big feet stepped on him quickly, not giving him a chance to get up at all. This was the principle of taking the initiative and taking the opponent's life. It was always like this when hunting in the forest. Otherwise, how could it hunt down those beasts that were stronger than it? The clouds in the night sky moved, and the moon that was blocked by the wind showed up. The person who was pulled by the rope and bumped into the fence turned his head and saw his companion being stepped under the bird's claws. With the help of the moonlight, he saw the bird coming out of the animal pen. He only felt a chill run from his tailbone to his brain. This wasn't the kind of stupid bird that they usually ate. Its body was obviously similar to those stupid birds, but the two claws in front of him were much sharper and stronger. They were like hooks, and the skin would be torn off if they were hooked. Quick, someone is stealing stupid birds again? The Lu tribe's patrolman heard the noise and ran over. When the person in the forest saw the situation change, he quickly ran towards the animal pen, wanting to pull his companion out. However, as soon as he ran out of the forest, he saw a big bird jump up in the dark. Its two big claws kicked one of his companions away. As for the other, he fell to the ground and struggled weakly, unable to get up at all. After seeing the situation over there, the person who ran out of the forest stopped and turned to run. The Lu tribe's people were already here, and the two men were injured. He definitely couldn't escape from the Lu tribe's pursuit with the injured. It was better to escape first. Chapter 768. When the patrolling guards rushed over, they only saw two heavily injured people. One of them had been hit by the bird's beak and immediately fell to the ground. They didn't know if he was dead or alive. After repairing the broken fence, the Lu tribesmen looked back a few times before they left. The giant bird that the flaming horns brought over had already returned to its nest. They were worried that this ferocious bird would harm the stupid birds in the animal pen, but now it seemed that not only was it harmless, it was also very beneficial. Didn't they just catch 2 bird thieves? Perhaps because they knew that the bird thieves had been caught, the other people in the forest didn't make any moves. The next day, the rested Yanjiao warriors walked out of the Lu tribe. The Lu tribesmen had provided them with food, but Xiao Xian and the others had also brought back a lot of meat jerky made from fearsome beast meat. Fearsome beast meat was still the most nutritious. They ate a little bit of all kinds of meat. Only when they were full would they have the strength to move. They didn't start immediately after eating. Xiao Xian had told them about the plan. There would be a waiting period, during which they would adjust their bodies to their best condition. They wouldn't be affected by eating too much. The chief of the Lu tribe, Bai Xing, came out early in the morning. He was waiting to see how the Yanjiao would deal with the people in the forest. Dian Fa and the 1,000 Masks remained in the Lu tribe. They didn't leave because they wanted to wait for the Lu tribesmen's final decision. They also wanted to see what the Yanjiao would do next. Xiao Xian stretched his arms and looked up at the sky. Cha-Cha had already scavenged for food and was circling in the air. Xiao Xian whistled. He jumped onto Cha-Cha's back and flew up into the sky. Xiao Xian's field of vision gradually widened. He could see the forest in the distance clearly. Taking a deep breath, Xiao Xian shouted, "Everyone in the forest, listen up! Other than the Yanjiao tribesmen, all of you must leave before noon. Otherwise we will kill you!" His voice was like the roar of a fearsome beast. It swept through the forest and spread into the distance. In order to let the people inside understand, Xiao Xian shouted in the tribal language, and then in the language of the other side of the sea. Ganxie belonged to Yanjiao now, so Xiao Xian wasn't wrong. His voice traveled far into the distance, and even the echo became weaker. In the forest, the people who heard Xiao Xian's words had different reactions. Humph! How arrogant! Which tribe is the Yanjiao tribe? When is noon? Otherwise I'll kill you? Can they kill us? Ha! At this time, in another part of the forest, Wu He and the others were chatting with old acquaintances on the other side of the sea. When they heard this, they threw away the food in their hands and ran away. Brothers of Chonglu, why are you running? The person who had been bragging to Wu He asked hurriedly when he saw the reaction of Wu He and the others. If we don't run, we'll really die. Wu He whistled. When the long-winged bird arrived, he and his companions flew out of the forest. They wanted to watch the show, but they had to avoid this troublesome place. They had to at least make sure they weren't affected. They didn't want the Yanjiao to misunderstand that they were involved in this matter. Actually, they weren't afraid of the other Yanjiao people. They were only afraid of Xiao Xian, who had shouted just now. They felt pain all over when they heard his voice. They could still remember the slap in the air clearly. Seeing the Chonglis flee as if they had met their natural enemy, the people who had been mercilessly thrown aside by Wu He were dumbfounded. When did the Chonglis become so afraid of trouble? One of them was puzzled. Didn't these Chonglis go wherever there was a show? Boss, what should we do? Another person turned to ask their leader, who was the one who had spoken to Wu He just now. That person lowered his head and thought for a moment. Let's observe the situation first. If the situation doesn't look good, we'll retreat immediately. The Chonglis liked to watch a show, but they were also quick to avoid life-threatening dangers. Wu He's group didn't seem to be faking it. While thinking, that person's brows furrowed slightly. They hadn't been on the mainland for long, so they didn't know much about the Yanjiao tribes. But now they had to take this seriously. They came here to reap benefits, not to throw their lives away. After Xiao Xian shouted, he landed and found a place to rest, leaving the Lu tribesmen to stare at him. You just shouted it out like that? It's fine? An elder of the Lu tribe whispered. Obviously, he didn't agree with this method. There had to be other ways to chase away those people in the forest. At the very least, it would be smarter to be discreet. The Yanjiao people were too reckless. Dian Fa also thought that these Yanjiao people were crazy. Did they think that this was Yanjiao territory? How long had those people been in the forest been here? He had already figured out everything in the forest. What about the Yanjiao people? They had just arrived and weren't familiar with the forest at all. One was in the dark while the other was in the light. It was obvious that the Yanjiao people were at a disadvantage. Yanjia wanted to say something, but he stopped. He wanted to ask Xiao Xian what his plan was. Should they reconsider and change their strategy? But Xiao Xian closed his eyes and rested. The other Yanjiao people didn't seem to have any objections. In the end, he could only sigh. He was still worried. The sun in the sky gradually moved up, and the shadows cast by the people on the ground gradually shortened. Xiao Xian opened his eyes and looked at the sun in the sky. He stood up and called out to the others, "Let's go." The Yanjiao people, who had been sharpening their swords for a long time, were energized. They immediately followed Xiao Xian out of the Lu tribe. At the border, the Lu tribesmen had already pulled open the wooden gate. They watched as the Yanjiao people walked out. They stared at the Yanjiao people who walked past them. They were curious as to whether these people would enter the forest just like that. The moment they stepped out of the Lu tribe's perimeter, the totemic power in Xiao Xian's body surged like boiling water. It roared, and the totemic patterns appeared. Red flames emerged from the totemic patterns. Then, the people around Xiao Xian and behind him also experienced the same change. The second, the third, the fifth, the 10th, 100 similar totemic patterns and flames appeared on their bodies. From afar, it looked like they were about to merge into one. It was as if someone had thrown a piece of firewood into a pot of oil. Flames erupted like a volcano, and their fighting spirit was ignited. A powerful aura suddenly rose and suppressed the surroundings. The fire seed's energy. The Lu shaman looked in that direction with a face full of shock. He had seen a similar scene at the Yanjiao's trading point. But seeing it again, he couldn't help but be shocked. This was the power of the fire seed. Even if the fire seed was no longer there, its energy still existed in the tribesmen. It followed the tribesmen everywhere, ready to start a prairie fire at any time. For Yanjiao, kill. As soon as the word kill was spoken, Xiao Xian raised his foot and stomped it hard on the ground. There was a loud boom. The ground didn't crack, but it shook. The 2 large stones the Lu tribesmen placed at the gate of the perimeter wall were shaken off the ground. The Lu and Thousand Masks people who followed behind all felt their feet go numb. The stomping sound was like a war drum, announcing the start of this battle. For Yanjiao, kill. Close to 500 warriors roared in unison. Their voices were so loud that it seemed like they were going to overturn everything around them. Their murderous aura was so strong that it made the sun's temperature drop by a few degrees. It made people's hair stand on end. The energy of the Yanjiao fire seed instantly covered the entire area. It was so strong that the Lu tribesmen had the urge to retreat. Some of them even retreated, wanting to get as far away from the Yanjiao people as possible. These Yanjiao people were still eating and laughing together yesterday. But now, these Yanjiao people were in a terrifying state. They were like ferocious beasts with their fangs bared, ready to pounce. Bai Xing looked at the Yanjiao people, and felt like he was hallucinating. It wasn't just 500 totemic warriors, but tens of thousands of them. It was as if the entire Yanjiao tribe had gathered here. It was so powerful. The shaman of the Lu tribe widened his eyes. His pupils dilated, and his Adam's apple bobbed up and down. What a strong fire seed! Even the fire seed in their fire pit seemed to be suppressed by it. Even if it was a battle spirit, it shouldn't be like this. The elders beside the Lu shaman gasped. Is it like this after merging with the fire seed? Aren't they only 500 people? Why is there such a strong fire seed energy? Xiao Xian waved his hand and the team split into 2 groups. They ran in different directions like wolves and tigers. They knew where they were at a disadvantage. They weren't familiar with the terrain, But this wasn't a forest where fearsome beasts live. They only needed to pay attention to the people hiding in the dark. Since they were in the open, then they had to be more direct. Weren't the people hiding in the forest familiar with the terrain? Weren't they able to hide in the dark? Fine, then let's chase those hiding in the dark out first. The two teams were like two knives on the rotating shaft of a meat grinder. They began to rotate in the forest. The people in the group were like fearsome beasts rushing forward. The ground under their feet trembled under their feet. They didn't seem to want to hide anything. The people in the forest felt the ground tremble closer and closer. Every sound was like a sudden clap of thunder, shocking them to the core. Some people who heard the shout in the morning and didn't leave were already regretting it. Leave? Or stay here? Maybe if they avoided the Yanjiao tribe's search, they would be fine? Many people thought so. However, they soon realized that they didn't understand the Yanjiao people. Boom! A tree trunk as thick as 5 people was brutally kicked by a Yanjiao warrior. Half of the tree was kicked away. The tree is down, let's see where you can hide. Change trees? Go ahead, let's see if you can escape faster or if we can surround you faster. The knives and axes in their hands flashed with cold light under the scattered light in the forest. The sharp edges of the knives and axes cut through the air, drawing a cruel cold light. You damn Yanjiao people! Before the heavy branches fell to the ground, several figures were forced to flee in different directions. Dozens of arrows pierced through the trees, whistling through the air as they chased after them. The warriors with knives, axes, hammers, spears, and other metal weapons followed closely. In this chase and encirclement, the division of labor was clear. One group was responsible for fighting, just like the wolves in the wolf pack who were responsible for chasing and intimidating the deer. The other group was responsible for attacking in the open. There was also a group of people who lowered their presence in the group at the beginning, but were secretly looking for opportunities to take their lives. Imitation was human nature and instinct. The ancestors of the tribesmen imitated the beasts in the forest to hunt. The predators in the forest had all sorts of ways to obtain food, and the tribesmen learned a lot from them. Then, they summarized, passed down, and improved. Even now, the Flaming Horn tribe was able to feed the entire tribe with just the things they paid in the Flaming River trading point, the crops in their fields, and the animals in their animal pens. However, they never stopped hunting. Because of this, they were able to maintain their peak condition and fight at their best. Bang! Bang! The sound of bowstrings vibrating could be heard. The arrows whistled through the air as they flew towards the forced-out target. Some of the arrows were meant to chase or block, while others were full of killing intent. The arrows stabbed into the ground, splashing up countless pieces of grass and dust. Ruthlessness flashed in the eyes of the person who was forced out. He stomped his feet and gripped the hilt of his sword tightly. He turned around and slashed with his sword. The next moment, his sword collided with the saber that was shining like a cold star, creating sporadic sparks. At some point, he thought he was going to be sent flying. However, with a clang, the sword in his hand was cut in half. He didn't even have time to react. The knife that broke the sword didn't slow down and quickly slashed across his throat. Even though he reacted quickly and tried his best to dodge, he still couldn't avoid the killing intent of the knife. Blood spurted out from his neck. The man holding the broken sword staggered 2 steps forward, his face still full of shock and fear. Xiao Xian didn't look at that person again and continued forward. The other Yanjiao warriors also followed, the air currents from their movements pushing the people standing there to the ground. The fallen man looked at the bloody figures stepping over him and deeply regretted not leaving when he heard the shout in the morning. If he had left, he wouldn't have died here. His vision gradually darkened. He didn't have time to regret. Before he died, he thought that the other people who stayed in the forest would probably end up like him. If he could do it all over again, he would definitely run away as soon as he heard the words, Yanjiao. No amount of temptation was more important than his life. The blood-stained Yanjiao warriors didn't look at the fallen men, nor did they think about what they were thinking before they died. They continued to clear out the people hiding in the dark in the forest. The smell of blood in the forest became stronger and stronger, carried farther and farther by the wind. The people who thought they were lucky heard the sound getting closer and closer. Even their bones trembled. If they left now, wouldn't it be too late? In the distance, scavenger birds smelled the scent and flew over. On the Lu tribe's side, the people standing on the outer wooden walls listened to the movements in the forest. They looked at the trees that were kicked into the air from time to time, and the muscles at the corners of their mouths twitched. In the past, when the Yanjiao tribe was still in the fearsome beast forest, Yanjiao often brought people with him to deliver baby beasts. However, he had never seen the Yanjiao people in battle. More accurately, he had never seen them in their hunting mode. Too cruel. The current chief of the Lu tribe, Bai Xing, looked over in a daze. An indescribable complex feeling arose in his mind. The shaman of the Lu tribe smelled the scent of blood carried by the wind and thought of the records left behind by their ancestors about the Yanjiao people. The Yanjiao people, no matter if it was 1,000 years ago or 1,000 years later, always liked to use similar methods. Simple and violent. Chapter 769. The forest flashed with cold light. The sounds of metal, people, branches breaking, and arrows flying through the air were mixed in with the smell of blood and carnage. Xiao Xian raised his hand to wipe off the blood that splashed on his face and continued to walk forward. Suddenly, Xiao Xian stopped in his tracks and the team slowed down. Xiao Xian saw Ganqie standing beside a tree not far away. On their way here, they had seen a few people lying dead on the ground. Judging by the wounds on their bodies, it was easy to tell who killed them. Most of them had been killed with their bare hands, and the method was similar. There were also bits and pieces of gray linen in the surrounding bushes. Ganqie had many wounds on his body. If he was a normal person, he would have died many times over. However, Ganqie was still moving like a normal person. There was no pain on his face. When he saw Xiao Xian and the rest, he even greeted them calmly. He must have gained a lot from last night. Xiao Xian thought to himself. Xiao Xian didn't stay here for long. He signaled the others to follow him and continue to sweep forward. The two teams moved in two different directions. Like the blades on the rotating shaft of a meat grinder, they cleaned up the forest around the Lu tribe from the inside to the outside. Ganqie wouldn't join them. After all, this operation focused on teamwork. Ganqie couldn't adapt to Yanjiao's operation. He didn't want to join them either. It seemed like he had another target. Moreover, from the looks of it, Ganqie was heading towards his target. Xiao Xian didn't need to call him along. After Xiao Xian and the rest left, Ganqie looked up at Yang Guang. At this time, the Yang Guang was not as strong as before. It was closer to dusk. Ganqie's cloak was mostly destroyed, and it hung on his body in tatters. Ganqie didn't mind it at all. He sniffed the air, and he could tell that there was a faint scent of blood in the air. The source of the scent was the target he was looking for. Ganqie didn't know why he could accurately identify the smell he was looking for. Perhaps the changes in his organs caused a change in his sense of smell. Moreover, the way he identified the smell of blood wasn't from the wind. It was from another smell in the blood that didn't spread with the wind. Perhaps it was a unique smell in the blood of people who had merged with the fire seed. It was different from that of normal beasts. Even though the people were downwind and the wind carried away the smell, Ganqie could still tell. After waking up from his long sleep, he was extremely sensitive to the smell of blood. There were no bloodstains on the ground. They covered it well. They also took into consideration the direction of the wind, but it still couldn't escape Ganqie's nose. Perhaps they didn't know that other than the smell of blood, there was another smell in their blood that couldn't be affected by the wind. Behind a bush as tall as a person clutched his abdomen. He breathed carefully and looked around nervously. His eyes were full of fear. He was at his limit. Fortunately, they were quite far from the Lu tribe. The Yanjiao team shouldn't be here. They had been active in the area around the Lu tribe for a long time. They were familiar with the area. They escaped quickly and left the people behind them behind. Did they escape death? His heart was filled with apprehension and regret. He didn't expect the 5 of them to lose so badly against one person last night. He couldn't help but tremble at the thought of that person. No, that person wasn't human. He definitely wasn't human. Otherwise, why couldn't they kill him? Luckily, he escaped quickly. Otherwise, he would have died like his 4 companions. As he was thinking, he suddenly heard rustling sounds approaching. It sounded like someone was running on the grass. Who was it? He didn't want to run. He felt that the temporary hiding place he had found was pretty good. As long as he continued to hide, he would be fine. Therefore, he only turned his head to look through the narrow gaps between the branches and leaves of the bushes to see who was coming. A figure covered in green appeared in his vision. He was so shocked that he almost stopped breathing. His blood seemed to freeze. How did this person catch up? Run, he thought, but his body was a step too late. An arm came straight at him like a spear. The next moment, he felt like his jaw was hit by a hammer. His whole body was lifted high into the air. His face contorted from the pain and broken bones. After landing heavily on the ground, he wanted to speak. He wanted to answer the question that they had ignored and didn't answer. He wanted this person to let him go, but the bones in his jaw were severely fractured. It was difficult for him to even open his mouth, let alone say a clear and complete sentence. Looking at the person walking over step by step, he used his arm to support himself. He wanted to run away again, but this time, he didn't have the chance. A hand pressed down on his head, forcing him back to the ground again. Bam! His head hit the ground, causing grass and mud to splatter in all directions. He was already seriously injured, so he couldn't withstand the impact. His mind was in a mess. Crack! There was the sound of bones breaking. The person on the ground stopped breathing. Gan Xie retracted his hand from the person's head. When he got up, he was still confused. Why did these people look down on tribesmen? It had nothing to do with their strength. After all, these people weren't that strong. Gan Xie didn't understand. Why did these people feel so superior when they no longer lived as tribesmen? Although these people didn't answer Gan Xie's question directly, their reactions and words were filled with disdain. It wasn't just these 5 people. There were others too. These people from the other side of the sea made Gan Xie unhappy when they talked about tribesmen. When he was in a bad mood, he didn't hold back. Weren't these people tribesmen too? Even if their way of life had changed, they shouldn't be so disdainful. Did the fire seed change, or did the people change? Gan Xie maintained his posture and started to think. No, the fire seed was still the fire seed. It was just that the people had changed. Just like himself. Gan Xie rubbed his fingers. The blood on his hand was still warm. It was much warmer than the blood on his body. That was because Gan Xie didn't have any body temperature. Gan Xie didn't look at the person on the ground. He glanced at the trees in front of him. He wanted to walk over, but after looking at the sky, he turned and walked back to the Lu tribe. He was hungry. When he saw the blood, he felt hungry. He even wondered if he should use the man's blood to alleviate his hunger. However, this was just a thought. He didn't actually do it. He wasn't interested in drinking human blood for now. After Gan Xie left, a few figures walked out from the bushes in the direction he was looking at. Their faces were pale and they were frightened. They came from a mid-sized tribe in the central region. After merging with the fire seed, the people in the tribe were like wild horses out of control. All kinds of thoughts started to form in their mind. After hearing about the Lu tribe situation, they came over to take advantage of the situation. who knew that they would almost lose their lives before they could take advantage of the situation. They didn't come out when Xiao Xian shouted in the morning. They only came out when they heard the Flaming Horn tribe's frightening movements. They thought they had already left the warning area, but when they heard the commotion, they decided to come over and take a look. They thought they might be able to pick up some treasures, but who knew they would meet such a terrifying person? They believed that the person they were looking for must have noticed them. He just didn't care about them for some reason. At this moment they felt extremely lucky. When dusk fell, the two teams of Yanjiao walked out of the forest covered in blood. They had been killing nonstop for half a day. They were exhausted physically and mentally. Their nerves were also tense. They were in their peak state when they were hunting in the forest. They felt like they were on fire. Even though it was over, they still couldn't calm down. However, even though they were still excited, their bodies were still exhausted. Even if their bodies were made of iron, they would still get tired. They weren't Ganxie, so they were about the same. But even if they were tired, they couldn't stop the strong murderous aura and the smell of blood from their bodies. Every pore on their bodies exuded a strong murderous aura. It made them look like ferocious beasts. Anyone who looked at them would feel a chill run down their spine. Even people who were used to seeing blood and death couldn't help but avoid them at this moment. When the Lu tribesmen saw the Yanjiao people coming over, they immediately opened up a path. They were nervous when they were more than 5 steps away from the team. After coming out of the forest, the people in the team felt much more relaxed. They even put their arms around each other's shoulders and laughed. It was just like when they were returning from a hunt. The injured had already been sent to the Lu tribe for treatment. They brought their own medicine. The medicine in the Lu tribe wasn't any better than the Yanjiao medicine. Bai Xing was just about to go up and say something to Xiao Xian when his gaze swept past the Yanjiao team. He looked at the back of the team and asked, "Hey, who's that?" Xiao Xian turned his head and smiled. "It's Ganxie, the one who was with us before." He was wearing a cloak. The Lu tribesmen were shocked. Was this the person who was stabbed with a sword but was fine? Yesterday, Ganxie was wearing a cloak and a hood so they couldn't see his face clearly. Also, he wasn't here last night so they didn't know what he looked like. Now that he wasn't wearing a cloak, they could see his face clearly. But after they saw him clearly, they were even more shocked. Ganxie's original appearance was only slightly greener than a normal person's. There wasn't anything special about him. But now, when Ganxie came out of the forest, the wounds on his body were exposed to everyone. Ganxie didn't look strong. At least compared to the Yanjiao people, Ganxie looked thin and weak. His cloak was tattered from the fight in the forest, and it couldn't cover the wounds on his body. At this moment, there were countless wounds on Ganxie's body. His chest, back, limbs, neck, and even his face were all healed. Some of the wounds were only scars left. They were of different lengths and densely packed together. It was a shocking sight. Some people were impressed. Ganxie was indeed a brave warrior with such terrifying injuries. It wasn't hard to imagine the danger he faced in the forest. But there were also some people who saw something else. Because they saw it, they were even more shocked. They looked at Ganxie with respect and fear. More than half of those wounds would have been life-threatening if they were on a normal person. It would be a miracle if they were still alive. But there were also some wounds that were truly fatal. For example, the most obvious ones were around his heart, neck, and other places. Just by looking at the wounds, one could roughly estimate the depth of the wound. Cuts, stabs, and other wounds would have been fatal if they were on a normal person. But Ganxie was just like yesterday. He was completely fine. His face was calm and he didn't look like he was injured at all. Dian Fa looked at Ganxie in shock. This person was even more dangerous than the Yanjiao people. Where did the Yanjiao people find someone like him? Why did he join the Yanjiao people? Elder Xiao Xian, the people in the forest. Bai Xing asked. There shouldn't be any problems around here. Unless someone is hiding and hasn't been found by us. Xiao Xian looked around the forest. Flocks of scavenger birds were already moving around in the forest. Thank you, Bai Xing said solemnly. The promised reward will be sent tomorrow. Okay. Since it was a deal, he had to take what he had to take. Xiao Xian thought of something and said, We'll leave once you're done dividing the reared beasts. Hearing this, Bai Xing paused in his actions and remained silent. We've already done what we have to do. We won't stay here forever. We won't interfere with your decisions. But if you want to move and merge your fire seed, these 2 days are the best time to do so. The threats around them had been dealt with. Those who had gone into hiding wouldn't come back anytime soon. This was a good opportunity. If they missed it, they wouldn't have another chance. They couldn't have too many distractions when merging their fire seed. I understand. Bai Xing gritted his teeth. He had already made up his mind. Seeing Bai Xing leave with heavy but determined steps, Guang Yi asked Xiao Xian, Can the Lu tribesmen merge their fire seed? Yes. But I don't know where they'll move to. They won't stay here any longer, Xiao Xian deduced from what he heard from the Lu tribesmen. The Thousand Masks tribe was still waiting. This meant that the Lu tribesmen didn't have a consensus. This isn't good. Guang Yi frowned. He didn't like this attitude of the Lu tribesmen and didn't expect them to move to the Flaming River region. Then we'll have to see how they perform. After this incident, if they still couldn't find the root of the problem, the Lu tribe might be able to get through this, but they might not be able to survive the next time, even if they merged their fire seed. After checking on the injured again, Xiao Xian assigned them to take turns to keep watch. Then, he asked Guang to bring the forest raccoons back to the animal pens. Although they had cleared out a group of people in the forest, they couldn't be sure if anyone else would dare to come and steal the bird. That night, the Yanjiao people slept well. However, the Thousand Masks and Lu tribesmen suffered from insomnia. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.